Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. Preview season marches on, and despite the fact that Oregon State and Wazoo no longer have a scheduling agreement with the Mountain West, we're going to welcome them with open arms for this episode. But before we get to that, we have some news. We have a watch party for week 0, a live event that you can come watch with Collin Wilson, Duck, Stuckey, myself. Joe's on weed in Chicago, Illinois on August 23rd. Kickoff starts at 11, so meet us there. You got Farmageddon, Iowa State, K-State, the whole crew. It's going to be a lot of fun. Have some drinks, throw down some bets, get the season started off right. Now, speaking of the Beavers and Cougs, we have our full BBOC team to discuss the Pac-12. That means Stuckey, Collin Wilson, Duck, and myself. As you can see, the whole allotment of our squad is here. And a reminder for all of you, if you're listening, if you enjoy our work, if you want to get our bets as soon as we put them in the Action Network app, go ahead and search us and then go ahead and follow. You're going to go for Collin Wilson, for Stuckey. If you're looking for Josh Dunn, go ahead and punch in Duck. If you're looking for me, type in Breeze, Breese. All right, we've already gotten our feet wet in preview season with the Sun Belt, but this will be Stuckey's preview debut. Stuck, has football officially started in your mind now that you're diving into two deeps, scheduling traps, turnover luck, everything that goes in to trying to figure out these teams coast to coast? Where are you emotionally? Has the season already begun?
Yeah, I mean, that started a bit ago. So I've already been in full grind mode, like just getting my body used to all-nighters, going on no sleep here. That'll be the norm rather than the exception once the season kicks off. So yeah, I'm just itching, ready to go. This will be my first, but then I'll be on the rest of the previews, so get used to hearing me ramble. And then, yeah, I'm going to start loading some more futures in the apps. Make sure you follow me there. And then, yeah, we talked to the guys at Joe's, 11 o'clock for the first kickoff, and I'll be there till 2 in the morning or whenever I don't know, what is it, Hawaii play? Hawaii Stanford's at night, whenever the last game is. So come, there's free drinks, but if you listen to the podcast, drinks are on me. So looking forward to seeing a lot of you guys there. But let's dive into some Pac-12.
Yeah, let's go Wazoo off the top of the 2 Pac-2. They won the most games last year. 8-5, lost in the Holiday Bowl, 52-35 to Cuse. Their win total this season is set at 5.5, 3 returning starters, all 3 on offense. 134th, alarm bells going off in terms of returning production. Jake Dickert bolted for Wake Forest. I can't wait to hear your take, Collin and Stuck, when you get into the ACC preview, if that marriage is going to work on the East Coast with Dickert. In comes Jimmy Rogers from South Dakota State. He went 27-3 as a head coach, 1 natty, 1 semifinal trip. So what does that mean? Well, it means bye-bye air raid, hello ground and pound. Let's start there, Stuck. Do you think they have the personnel from week 1 to run the hell out of the ball, or do you see them relying a bit more on Zevi Eckhouse early in the season?
Yeah, it's not necessarily going to be Zevi. I mean, I assume it will be, but as of right now, it's a 4-way battle. I mean, you got Duggar from Pitt, Shepard from Rutgers, the sophomore Potter. They said they might even use multiple quarterbacks, so we'll see. You can expect them to just run the ball. I mean, that's what Rodgers wants to do. They're going to be run heavy. That's kind of going to be their MO and what they need to lean on here. I'm worried about the defense. I mean, the linebacker position should be okay. They got a really good nickel from South Dakota State. It's a really interesting team in that I think they did as well as they could have with the hire of Rodgers, given what was out there. And this is going to be one of those teams. It's the lesser extent of Indiana, but it's instead of coming from a group of 5, this is basically, especially on the defensive end, this is like South Dakota State reincarnate. I mean, this is a brand new team. There's 74 new players on this team. And I mean, you might have, I don't think this is going to be the case, but you might have, 8 starters on the defense, a couple on the offense, even the kicker. And then you have a head coach, your offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. This is all from South Dakota State. So how are those guys going to translate with not only stepping up in class, but a full schedule? Even though it's a weird schedule, it's 11 opponents from 10 different leagues, and you play a team twice. We'll get to Oregon State. I mean, they play Oregon State twice. So we're talking about win totals. These are the 2 most correlated win totals out there because they play each other twice. That's outside of COVID. That's only happened one other time in the past 50 years. 2019, I believe, Liberty, New Mexico State. So a rarity. And the schedule is tricky. I mean, like, you just look at it. I think they play 5 teams off of byes. You got some odd road trips at the end of the year. You're going, like, they got to go to UVA. They're going to JMU. This is all in the second half of the year, going out to Virginia. And I'm worried about the depth, especially on defense, the defensive line in particular. And if they can't hold up for this win total, you're really counting on some of those wins late, right? Like you kind of hoping that you split with Oregon State. You got to beat La Tech at home. We'll see if Cumbie's still there, what La Tech's doing at the time. Toledo is, it's Jason Candle. He can always give away a game. But if your depth isn't holding up in that second half of the schedule, I don't see how there's any way that they can get to 6 wins with a win total of 5.5. It is heavily juiced to the under. What is it? Probably it's like 4.8 is basically what it is. I project them around 4.58. So I do show a little value on the under. It's under or nothing for me. There's just a lot of questions. I like the higher, but they lost so much. And as you mentioned, bottom 3 or 4 in returning production. For what it's worth, bottom 15 teams in returning production last year. If you bet all those unders, they went 9, 5, and 1. And that's the close. There's just so many questions with this team and so much new. And then the schedule's pretty tricky. It's under or nothing for me.
Duck, let me get a quick take here because you live and breathe FCS football. The defense from a personnel standpoint looks like it's going to be a full-on mystery, but Jesse Bobbitt comes in, only 2 years of coordinator experience, but last year his defense with the Jackrabbits was elite, led the nation in scoring defense at the FCS level. What do you expect out of him philosophically first year on the Blues?
I expect that the talent will be the one that has dropped from what we're used to seeing with prior Wazoo defenses, but I think that the unit will play cohesively together because they have familiarity with each other and familiarity with the system. It's still not enough for me to get real excited about this. However, I think this is a hire that can work long term, and I think this program can elevate themselves once they get back into the Pac-12 Conference and start recruiting some different athletes. The concern for me is that we're now the second year overall where this group is no longer recruiting the Pac-12 level athletes, the same type of athletes that Oregon, USC, Arizona State were all recruiting. Now you've dropped your nucleus of talent because you're recruiting fringe Mountain West athletes, and with their geographic location primarily concentrated around the Big Sky, that's the type of level of athlete that you're recruiting. And now you have 27 FCS players infused on both sides of the ball in the 2 deep. And I just significantly worry about the depth, and there is going to be a talent drop-off. We even saw that with South Dakota State a little bit last season when they went up against Oklahoma State, and their trench play couldn't hold up, and the back 7 just couldn't hold up even against Oklahoma State. So I'm very concerned about that. Stuck, you had alluded to the schedule, which is just treacherous. 4 times this season, Wazoo travels east of the Mountain Time Zone, which they're not accustomed to doing. They've got to go to North Texas. A trip to Colorado State will not be easy. And then back-to-back, they go to Ole Miss, and then they've got to double back and get back on the plane going to Virginia, which will be really treacherous. Don't see a lot of wins on the schedule. This is one of the first I bet under 5.5.
Collin, the path to 6 wins is what? You got to beat Idaho, which isn't even a given. That's a big rivalry battle. The Palouse. They're a good FCS program. Quarterfinals 2 years in a row. They lost a lot from last year's team, but I think Josh Wood's going to be the quarterback. If you guys follow Fresno, but that's not a given. But the path to 6 is like you got to beat Idaho, San Diego State. You're going to be favored in that game, but they might be improved. And then you got to beat Toledo, I would assume, at home. Oregon State split, then get La Tech at home. The rest are going to be pretty tough. And are they going to win all 6 of those games, which I think is the best and most realistic path to 6? I have my doubts.
How low are your projections, Collin? Because you could optimistically look at this as a mystery box, a new scheme, a lot of new faces, or you could say there's just a small likelihood that it all clicks and they win every single game that they're supposed to win, because there was really no wiggle room if they drop any of the games that they're favored by more than 3 or 4 points on the schedule.
Right. And I knew that I would be coming into the Pac-2 as the contrarian to Duck and Stuck. Right. I knew that with these 2 teams, I was going to be completely contrarian, and I am contrarian to their opinions and almost everybody else's opinion on Washington State. And I make this at 5.8, which says with plus juice, like plus 130 on 5.5, I should go over. Now I haven't fired on it because it's one of those things, like I said on the Sunbelt podcast, where some of these teams get dogpiled in the market and the juice moves so much. You just make a calendar reminder on like August 19th to go in and get a better number when you can. Maybe you even get a better total if they don't move the juice. And so let me talk about why I like the positives about this team. By the way, before I deep dive into Washington State, please, for the love of God, if they get 6 wins, put them in a bowl with Fresno State so I can watch North Dakota State and South Dakota State play in a bowl against each other. It'll be so much film to watch. Zevi Eckhouse, I think one thing that really wasn't on display last year is that he had over 1,000 rushing yards in his 3 years at Bryant, and like 850 of that was from scrambles. He can move, he can get around, he's nimble, and that's exactly what the South Dakota State Jacks were doing with their run approach, and now that's coming to Pullman. So I think Zevi kind of fills that out, and if it's really not him at quarterback, we'll see, but I think he kind of fits that system. You have South Dakota State running backs, you have San Diego State running backs, fringe level players on the Mountain West perspective, sure. And I know that South Dakota State, we say that they've dropped off a little bit in PR, but they would have been favored over a few teams in the Mountain West last year. So I don't think it's like that big of a thing when you say this is an FCS player moving up. Well, some of these FCS teams were better than some of the teams in the Mountain West. So I don't think it's that big of a drop off. So I do like Zevi taking the quarterback here, but you can't deny what's going on defense. 2 of the top 17 tacklers return to the defense. A flux of San Diego State players are going to be in the secondary here for the team. And I think that's a great thing for defensive coordinator Jesse Bobbitt. He was the defensive coordinator at South Dakota State. There should be no problems with the secondary here for those guys that played. And yes, Alan Bowman might have torn them up, but like Stuckey and I have said, Alan Bowman shows up one game, gives up 7 INTs, and other games he just has a good looking mustache. So, I think what we have to consider is that the front seven is a group of upperclassmen, seniors that didn't get any playing time anywhere else. They're trying to prove themselves. I can't defend them in what they have. They don't have experience. They're 5th, 6th year seniors still hanging on to COVID. But the secondary is what comes into play on this schedule. 3 games on this schedule should be winners. Idaho, San Diego State, La Tech. I kind of have, as a fringe game because La Tech is on back-to-back travel. Washington State is off of a bye. I have them projected about 8.5 in that game. Those are 3 games that should absolutely be wins. When you go on that, I have coin flips on the road against North Texas. I know North Texas, you guys are going to cut the pod on that conference. I know North Texas has improved, but it's not a line that's above 4.5 in my opinion. Colorado State, I just told you that South Dakota State secondary is coming over. That shouldn't be a problem going up against Jay Norvell if he decides to go back to the flying offense with Fowler Nicolosi. So really this comes down to, if you're going to take an over with them at 5.5 at plus money, you're going to have 2 games against Oregon State. And I don't know what Stuck or Duck or anybody else's power ratings are. I got Oregon State favored at home by about 2.5. And then when Washington State hosts at the end of the season, I've got them favored by about 3. This is essentially to me a game that would be pick 'em on a neutral field. So with Washington State, you can go over or under. Why not take the over with the plus money? And why not use 2 games in the month of November that you get to hedge this number? But I'm sitting tight. I will assess the market around August 19th. I think the actionable play is a similar angle on the next team.
No, we're way off numbers wise, but I have Oregon State I have them favored only in 3 games. Oregon State at home against Washington State at home against Oregon State, 2-point dog. And then I have them Washington State is over a touchdown underdog on the road.
So much orange Kool-Aid out there.
I have favored in 3 games, and there's a bunch of coin flips in here. Colorado State I have around 4. The Oregon State game at home 2, but they got to win all these games. I project them 4.6. I'm much lower. I'm much higher on Oregon State than which we can get to next.
What are you trusting Tony Elliott out of Virginia? Even with everything that come back, they're so sloppy tackling.
It's also an awful spot. The La Tech spot's really good. La Tech spot will be in Newark the week before and coming across country. But in totality, the schedule is not great. The
Toledo spot is not good for Toledo either. That's sandwiched in between a bunch of good MAC games for Toledo. You're right. It's hot and cold on good spots for Washington State. Bad spots for the teams.
Yeah, I just think they have more. They have also 5 teams off of byes, which I think is the most in college football this year.
True.
So yeah, I'm much lower than you. So we shall see. But we should tie the ribbon with Oregon State, who's obviously very related to Washington State.
Real quick, Collin, if you're on an island with Wazoo, I want to give you this little tidbit. Do you know what Zevi means in German?
I know some German, like Sprechen Sie Deutsch. No, please tell me.
Well, if you're hoping that Zevi has that dog in him, don't worry. He's got that wolf in him. So I think the nation could be introduced to his nickname, the Wolf, if he ends up balling out and saving this season and taking them to a bowl game. As Stuckey said, it's not a Pac-2 preview without the other team. Let's talk about the Beavers. Oregon State 5-7 last season. Win total a little bit higher than the Cougs. It's sitting at 6.5. It's because they have 8 starters returning 4 on each side of the ball, 39th in returning production, 24th on defense. Let's start with the best player on the team, Anthony Hankerson. He's a star, over 1,200 total yards from scrimmage last year, 15 total touchdowns, top 20 in broken tackles. Just give him the ball, let him work. Now they pair him with Malik Murphy, and they paid a pretty penny for him, 1.5 mil by some reports. He's got upside as a passer, but can he throw for more yardage and turn down on the turnovers? Because he has a strong receiving core, particularly at tight end. But last season, 13 of his turnover-worthy plays turned into 12 picks. Will he have time to operate? Because there's 4 new starters up front, and injuries in the spring didn't leave them with definitive answers coming into fall camp. So we'll see what they do up front. Bray is, taking back play calling duties on the defensive side of the ball. I think that's meaningful. He's hoping to bring that havoc back up. They were top 20 in havoc in 2023. It all fell apart last season. They finished outside the top 110 in havoc. So you're Mr. Havoc here, Collin. The question's for you. Do you see enough talent on hand with Bray taking over the play calling duties for this to be more than just a boom or bust version of the 2024 defense?
I love Oregon State. And listen, the fact that they've kind of been independent here for a couple of years, especially baseball and football, and like going out and scheduling teams they don't have to play, like Texas Tech, Fresno. I really love what they're doing. Like they love to be challenged, and there's no better place in the world to wear flannel and drink red wine than Reser Stadium in November. So listen, I love this team. I always have, but my projection does not meet where the current market is. And that's because the people that are in our industry that hit this stuff early have been hitting Oregon State hard. And there's a lot of good reasons. And I get it with Malik Murphy, transfers in from Duke, really because Darian Mensah from Tulane got paid a whole bunch of money and Malik just didn't have a place to play. Kind of same thing when he's blocked by Arch and Quinn at Texas. So there's nothing wrong with this kid except, and I love the fact that the offensive coordinator is Ryan Gunderson. If that name doesn't spin off any memories of our podcasts over the recent years, Ryan Gunderson was the quarterback coach at UCLA. You want to know why Dorian Thompson-Robinson went crazy for the last 2 years he was at UCLA? It wasn't Chip Kelly, because I asked Chip Kelly at Media Days, what's going to happen with Ryan Gunderson? He said, DTR is going to take off because of Ryan Gunderson. We stole him from San Jose State. This guy is an up-and-coming quarterback coach, OC here. So I love that for Malik Murphy. What bothers me, you see 26-13 turnover, big time throws to turnover-worthy play rates. That's great for Malik Murphy, but his turnover-worthy play rate skyrockets when he has pressure, like to an unbelievable amount when he has hands in his face. Oregon State returns 44 starts on the offensive line. That is one of the lowest in the nation, I believe, 97th in the nation in returning experience of the offensive line. So that gives me a little bit of worries. Anthony Hankerson is his absolute beast, 57 missed tackles forced last year. So if they keep it on the ground, if they can keep Malik Murphy clean, then that's a positive. On the defensive side, Trent Bray is going to see what he can pull his magic over there. He wants to pull Oregon State to be more havoc-minded like they were in 22 and 23. That was the whole Beavers defense, and he will go boom or bust. Like, I'm going to get in your backfield, and I'm going to pressure you, and I'm going to try to force a fumble, or I'm going to give up an explosive play, which could happen here. So, Nico Taylor at outside linebacker is big. The defensive line is light on experience. I think they're going to struggle to stop power rush teams. That kind of gives me pause with Washington State and Zevi and what South Dakota State offense kind of is. When you look at their schedule, I don't think it's set up to have success because both trenches are so soft in experience and size. Both defensive line and the offensive line are just not there where we want. Yes, Malik Murphy is this shiny thing that we all want to work out. And yes, Ryan Gunderson is a great quarterback coach, but the trenches are not there for this team for what the price is in the market right now. Cal and Fresno, these are not automatic wins whatsoever. I mean, Stuck will disagree with me on power rating here, but I think Oregon State is -3, but that opened like a pick. I mean, it's being pushed hard by the market, and it's getting into territory where you got to start looking at a dumpster fire program like Cal. And then Oregon State playing Fresno, like that is not a slam dunk for me whatsoever for them to beat them. I think I make that like 3. Then Texas Tech's going to be favored by at least 17. Oregon's not going to get, come on, that's not going to get any easier. So are we potentially looking at a really bad September? It's not completely off the table that we're 0-4. Heading out of September. 1-3 is a probability. 2-2 is more like about 47% if you do the math. So, I mean, if you look at this schedule, I mean, the Beavers have to pick up 6 days after the Civil War, and they have to play underdog to a Houston team that's coming off of a bye. Not a good spot whatsoever. They're going to be a field goal or less favorite against Wake and Wazoo. We've already talked about the point spreads there. By the way, I think Wake is a complete dumpster fire. And so, you know, I make it 3 games in the schedule in the second half where you're going to have a chance to hedge, right? You're going to get to hedge Washington State twice. And then there's going to be a game against Wake Forest if you need it. My play, I make the win total 6. I'm really nervous about the trenches here. I'm willing to listen to the guys to help me change my mind. I've already played under 6.5 plus 150. The plus 150 is so crucially important because there's 3 games in the last 6 where you can hedge that plus 150 off and take a money line on the other side like you could with Washington State, which is my plan of action. One of those 2 games, I will take Washington State to hedge the plus 150 under 6.5.
You worked yourself up into a lather, so we'll see what our other 2 guests have to think about this. Does the running game and a potentially more aggressive defense interest you, Stuck, or are you selling the Beavs right out of the first week of the season?
I mean, I will say, this opened 6.5 flat. I project 6.8. So win total's now sitting right around 7.2 with juice. So I actually lean under at this number. They do have 10 winnable games on the schedule. Like, they're not beating Texas Tech. They're not beating Oregon. They get a bunch of teams that are in reset mode, right? Like, they face 8 new quarterbacks. They have, so like, if you guarantee that they lose to Texas Tech, they lose to Oregon, they beat Lafayette, there's 9 games left. 7 of those 9 have new coaches. The other 2 are Houston and Cal with new quarterbacks and a lot of questions.
Tulsa's a bye week.
Maybe, but Tulsa has a new coach, and they're on the road, and there's a lot of. If you look just based on average returning starters, Oregon State faces the 3rd fewest in all of college football. So they're what does that mean? There's a lot of teams on their schedule are starting new, and there's a ton of new coaches, there's new quarterbacks, and there's a lot of turnover on all these rosters. What does that mean? A lot of variance. So, like, what will Fresno look like? What will Tulsa look like? Now, Collin brings up a good point. The one thing I am worried about, first of all, I'm not a Malik Murphy guy. He can't move. He's too inaccurate. The plan here is to feed Hankerson, and then you have Walker back at wide receiver. You hope that they have some guy, like Clemens has to step up. He's a former Michigan transfer. They have some guys that are fast. So I think they're going to just run. And then Murphy has a cannon arm. He's just too inaccurate, and he makes too many poor decisions. But the biggest thing is that the offensive line, everything could fall apart. And like they might not be able to run the ball with the offensive line. I mean, their left tackle from last year's with the Ravens, their right tackle's with Arizona, their left guard is with the Falcons, their right guard who they're counting on is recovering from an ACL and MCL. He's still not ready. It's like their center is good. That's it. That's all they have that's right now that they can really count on the offensive line. So everything could fall apart. Defensively, their defensive coordinator left. He resigned. He's now with Cal. They'll miss him in recruiting. He's defensive back coach. He left. His dad died, and his mom was in the hospital. It's just an unfortunate situation. So Bray's going to take over. The reason the D sucked last year, I mean, let's be honest, was injuries. There was some clear holes, but at one point, 17 of the 22 on their 2 deep were out with injuries at the same time. So, like, they were decimated. They moved the tight end to defensive line, who's now going to start on defensive line this year. I think they'll be, if you look, the secondary, we'll see. There's some guys that I don't even know when they're going to be ready. Like Singleton has like pro potential, but he's always hurt. This is a guy who's been around forever. I don't know when he's coming back, but I think the secondary should be a little bit better. Like they threw some guys into the fire last year. Thomas is really good at safety, but the defensive line, like I get, if you look, they're probably their best players, Taylor at outside linebacker. They bring in a couple other outside linebackers who I think could give them some more juice because they only had 7 sacks last year, the lowest in all of FBS. But to Colin's point, I don't know if they're going to be able to stop their run. And while I think their pressure should be a little better, their secondary should be a little better, especially if they get some of these guys back. They lost 3 starting. I mean, their injuries were crazy last year for Oregon State. They lost 3 starting offensive lineman injury, 3 corners. They're 5 of their top defensive tackles. So it was just a mess. So if they get some of these guys back in the secondary, they should be all right there. But if I look at the schedule, who's throwing the ball? They're not. So they're not beating Texas Tech and Oregon. Who's throwing the ball that you're worried about? Like Cal, Fresno, Houston, App State, Wake, Lafayette, Wazoo, Sam Houston, Tulsa. Nobody. So what are a lot of these teams going to do? Like Tulsa now wants to run the ball more. Fresno, they want to run the ball more. I assume Cal's going to try to lean on their ground game, especially like Devin Brown starts. He's just going to be snapping it back and then running straight ahead. I guess is their offense.
On,
so all these teams want to run the ball, and their run D might be very bad. Other teams controlling the clock against them, and then on the other side, if their offensive line can't hold up, then it might all fall apart. So I have too many questions to go over here. My numbers now, after this has been hit, say there's value on the under. A lot of this is going to come down to those two games. I think they'll probably lose to Houston. I think Houston's improved.
Yeah,
Cal and Fresno games.
Willie Fritz is going to salivate when he sees tape. He's got 2 weeks to prepare. Willie Fritz is going to it's going to be 8 yards a carry.
Yeah, then you're going to Boone. It's not easy. I mean, so there's a world where they're 0-6 if this offensive line is a disaster, and then teams are just running on them, and Murphy's turning the ball over. They could start 0-6. So originally, I wanted to buy this team, but it's too expensive now. Duck, what do you think?
Similar. I won't hit on all the points you made, but I'm really concerned about the trenches. The offensive line appears to be a mess. They have to play better than they did last year. Defensively, they couldn't stop the run. There was just so many stretches in the season where teams could just run all over this group. And then not only that, but they were bad in securing havoc as well. Dead last in FBS as a team with just 7 sacks registered and 45 tackles for loss. And it was the pass coverage unit that paid the price because you couldn't get any pressure to opposing quarterbacks. And so coverage had to hold on for an extra 2 seconds, and they just couldn't hold up in the back end. So I think the key that unlocks this team this year is shoring up the offensive line and finding a combo that works to possess the football and run the ball. And then they've got to figure out a way to get pressure, because if not, it could just be another one of those things where you see 4-man front and you see people running the ball all over Oregon State again. And the pass coverage is just going to be middling because there's no pressure and they have to try to cover for so long. So I think it's concerning. I think the schedule is also really concerning. I think the Cal game is one where we may not see it rear its ugly head, but certainly it could against Fresno. And this team could be 1-4 getting out of September. And then you got to go to App State and then double back for Wake. Maybe that's a split. So there's just too much that goes on early in the schedule. And then you have a locker room where you're 1-4, 1-5, 2-5. And you've got to rally the troops to try to get this team to fight and scratch and claw your way to a bowl game. 7 could be tough here. I think there's some winnable games late in the schedule if this coaching staff can keep everybody's head in it with some early season losses. That, I think, will be the biggest challenge for Oregon State this season.
Yeah, because they could realistically, I mean, it's a high variance schedule based on the start, and then because they could, like, the last 6 are Wake at home, Lafayette at home, Wazoo twice, Sam Houston State at home, and at Tulsa. Now, again, Sam Houston State starting all over, Wazoo starting all over, Tulsa starting all over, Wake Forest starting all over. It's a high variance schedule, but there's enough easy wins that I think that they'll probably get to 6. But yeah, now if I had to, I like my gut says they're going to finish with 7 wins, but no interest now.
Stuck more variance. This schedule for Oregon State or an Elite 8 run was shooting 70% from 3-point.
This guy, the Cal game is so massive because everything is just Cal's a disaster. But if they can run the ball on this team, like, Wilcox's defense is going to show up and it's probably going to confuse Murphy, and that game is just so big. And Fresno's going to try to run all over them.
Cal's best game is going to be their first game because they're going to practice 3 weeks for it. And then after that, it'll all fall off. But it's not a slam dunk win.
Yeah, but I mean, if you told me Oregon State went 10-2, I wouldn't be completely shocked. Just because there's so many teams that are starting all over, and if they get those first 2 games at home, right, they're going to lose to Oregon and Texas Tech. But the rest, they're all they have 10 winnable games on the schedule. Now, are they all going to break right? No, but this is just too expensive.
Malik's going to do bad things. Right, Malik's going to do bad things. Do we have money at the Northwestern game? Is he going to throw the birds up to his offensive coordinator up in the press box? I mean, Malik's going to do dumb things.
All right, Stuck, thank you for your service. I'm glad that you were back. If you are interested in following his work here at BBOC, you're in luck, because after this episode covering the Mountain West, he's riding for every single preview the rest of the way. We got the American, forget about the AAC, it's the American now, the MAC, and then all the Power 4 teams, including Notre Dame as well. Thank you so much, Stuckey, for dropping in.
35 minutes for the Pac-12. Have fun, guys. See
I
y'all
think
in
we're back,
Chicago.
baby. If we're putting up numbers like this, it means we're already in midseason form. On to the Mountain West Conference, which, thanks to the Pac-12 fallout, is now being gutted next year. Basically, all the schools that have state in their name are going to the Pacific Conference, whatever that Pac number afterwards ends up landing on. And the Mountain West Conference next year will be Air Force Hawaii, Nevada, New Mexico, Northern Illinois, and football only, San Jose State, UNLV, UTEP, and Wyoming. I have to throw out a quick rant here because about 6 years ago, I was on Twitter and I suggested that the Pac 12 at that time needed to add the Zags in basketball and they needed to add Boise State as a full time member. And I remember specifically a lot of people with Stanford or Cal Berkeley in their Twitter profiles. We are not going to add a school that was a junior college in the 70s to our conference. That's ridiculous. We have too much prestige, as though the Arizona schools were Harvard and Yale or something. And now here we are. Instead of having one really good conference where you could add in Oregon State and Wazoo, no, we have to split this baby, and we have two middling, G5 conferences in terms of the overall talent. I'm pissed about it. What I'm not pissed about is how good this conference could be this year, how competitive for those teams trying to get into that slot to challenge Boise. So let's start with the Broncos at the top because they punched their ticket to the 12-team college football playoff. And beyond that, not only did they do so, but they took Oregon 15 rounds in Autzen, one of the best games of the entire season. Ashton Jeanty ends up, finishing second in the Heisman race. Just an incredible run for him. He was also the first runner-up to get 300 first-place votes in 12 years. Shout out to Manti Te'o and his run and his invisible girlfriend. But let's get into the nitty-gritty of what they bring back, what they did last year. As I mentioned, 12-2, 7-0 in the Mountain West. They beat UNLV twice to get the crown. They're minus 145 to win the conference. This time around, their win total is sitting at 9.5. Even though Jeanty is out the door, now going to be the offensive engine for the Las Vegas Raiders. 15 starters return, 9 on offense, 6 on defense. 9th in returning production, which is very rare for a G5 school. 9th on offense, 31st on defense. First question, can they replace Jeanty, Moneyball style, in the aggregate? Sire Gaines, Malik Sherrod comes in from Fresno, Breezy Dubar, who I love. Dubar is a guy who I still think could be a breakout candidate because he is an absolute athletic freak. He can squat 520. He ran a 10.6 100-meter dash, 39-inch vertical jump. Just get this guy in the open field. Let's see what he can do. Obviously, Jeanty ate up every single carry. His usage was out of control last season. But I think the running back room is still in really good hands by G5 standards. Maddox Madsen was really underrated at times, in my opinion. He can protect the ball. He did so throughout the season until that Penn State game. I understand they were pressing. They were down in that game. I'm not going to hold that against him. He was accurate. He did some things with his legs as well. Now he gets Lauder back at tight ends. Chris Marshall is finally healthy. He's been kind of a mystery guy the whole way, but he joins Bolt and Caples in the wide receiver room. So they have talent everywhere. Can the offensive line improve a bit? Because Jeanty, when you look at the rushing numbers, you assume great offensive line, right? Well, they were 45th in line yards. Jeanty had just a bajillion yards after contact last year. So based on the experience and flexibility that they have in the two deep on the offensive line, I do think they could get better. Now, defensively, they blitzed more last year than just about anybody, and it worked. They went from 36 sacks in 2023 to 55 last fall. That was first in the entire country. But the other side of that is they also gave up 29 passing plays of 30 yards or more, which was 131st in the country. Can the secondary hold up being held on islands and having to, basically have no help over the top with a lot of those cover zero blitzes? We'll see. Especially when they draw USF in a tricky spot at the beginning of the season and Notre Dame. Both those games are on the road in the first 5 weeks. Colin, anything else I missed in terms of the table setting for this team that you think is an absolute headline that we need to focus when we talk about the Broncos?
A change in offensive coordinator.
There it is.
I think it's one of the biggest drop-offs in all of college football. When you listen, I said this on the Kickoff podcast. The reason Ohio State won the national title isn't because they paid $20 million for a roster. Anybody can have $20 million for a roster. Ask North Carolina. But when you've got Chip Kelly and you've got Jim Knowles, you can make changes on the fly, show up to a playoff game and play a completely different style. And they had an offensive coordinator, Dirk Cotter, that absolutely could game plan and outcoach X's and O's anybody. So the question is Nate Potter going to be able to do the same thing? He's been the co-OC. He's been under the wings. We'll see if he is as creative. We've had other Andy Avalos, we've had other DCs, OCs here before that have kind of veered off and gone other places and not been able to prove that they were as good. So we'll see that the word is still out there. And I think that's where you want to start, because when you talk about can we fill it in the aggregate with Sire Gaines, if you look at his extremely limited sample size, 20 carries, 6 missed tackles forced, if you aggregate that out, that is nowhere near the rate of creating missed tackles than Genty did. So, Genty, all this, he's extremely special. But the thing is even if he got touched in the backfield, he was able to make yards after contact. Now, Sire Gaines did have 4 yards after first contact. That is positive. Again, 20 carries. We'll see how that can handle out. I think Madsen, he has a ton to prove in my eyes. 21-3 TD to INT ratio probably has everybody high up saying this offense is going to be great because Madsen's got it all under control, but that is nowhere near what the other numbers say. 7-13 in big time throws and turnover worthy plays. He finished 50th in the nation in on target rate. What's an on target ball? It's when your wide receiver doesn't have to move. He doesn't have to shift. He's in stride and it hits him right in the numbers. Madsen finished 50th in the nation. That's not close to being one of the best. And, Latrell Caples is going to be the guy here, 48 targets out of the slot. That's going to be where we're going to go with this offense. I'm much more probably optimistic about the defense, although I've never been optimistic about an Eric Shenander defense. Going back to UCF, going back to Nebraska, Boise finished 132nd in tackling last year. Sloppy arm tackles, heads in the wrong places. Yeah, they're aggressive with the blitz, and they got it home, especially against Penn State. Drew Aller could not figure out what the hell Shenander was calling from a blitz perspective, but four of the top 5 tacklers returned for Shenander, so you can expect what we had last year sort of be the same. The tackling should still be sloppy, but everything else is going to be great, including stud linebacker Jaden Virgin-Morgan, 10 sacks, 5.5 TFL. So I expect the same out of the defense. The big question is the drop-off on the offense. I think they're double-digit favorites. I think you kind of throw away the non-con. I think you kind of throw away the whole playoff. Those numbers are, just out of control what these books are asking for to make the playoff this early in the season, especially with a brand name like Boise State. You're never going to get a number like that. It's kind of like Notre Dame. You're never going to get a good number in the playoff market whatsoever. So you kind of concentrate on the Mountain West schedule. Double-digit favorites in every Mountain West Conference game, depending on where you power rate UNLV. There's some minus 140s out there on Boise to win the Mountain West. I think that's better than the money line that you would get in a potential championship game, whether they're playing it in Vegas or San Jose or playing it in Boise. You're going to get this is a better money line ticket at minus 140 than what you're going to get there. It's a tricky spot hosting App off of a bye, but if you listen to the Sun Belt pod, I don't really think it's going to be a problem with App State this year. Notre Dame is kind of a big problem. I project the Irish about 15.5. I think the market is in there around that. If you want to get frisky and you're looking at that playoff plus 190, don't take it. Take the money line against Notre Dame, which I don't think they could win that game, but that is a much better number and a game that they're going to have to be considered for the playoff. I think you could have to win every other game and go in 11-1 and keep it close and cover against Notre Dame. But why not just take that money line instead of that playoff number at plus 190? My favorite bet, Mountain West Conference, minus 140. It's a great money line ticket come first Saturday of December.
Duck, do you think Boise is vulnerable here? Because not only were the numbers that Collin just listed out for Madsen under pressure in terms of putting the ball on the numbers, he did all of that with every single eye on the defense on Genty. The play actions, he got one-on-one. He doesn't have to worry about exotic coverages. He doesn't have to worry about weird blitzes. That's all out the window this year. So where are you emotionally? Let's start with the offense first, with a brand new play caller, having to shoulder the schematic load for Boise this year. Where are you with this offense?
I think that it's almost impossible to replace a generational talent like Ashton Genty, so they're going to have to pivot and add some quirks to the offense that we're not used to seeing from Boise State in the previous version. But I think the running back room does have some dudes, as we had mentioned, and so I think as long as the offensive line performs as they did last year, and they look solid by Mountain West standards, running the football shouldn't be an issue. Now, Maddox Madsen is going to have more placed on his shoulders this season. I'll be interested to see if he has taken a step in his maturation as a passer to improve a little bit of his accuracy and a little bit of the timing that maybe was lacking last season. Be a real interesting barometer in their opener against South Florida to see how that goes, along with their game against Notre Dame. But I think in Mountain West play, this team will be fine. And specifically, to hit home on what Collin said, I think even if Boise were to have a stunning loss in Mountain West Conference play, they're still going to be in position to make the championship game. I think no matter where it's played, they'll be favored. I actually did play Boise to win the Mountain West at minus 120 earlier in the summer. Really like this team. I think they're head and shoulders above the rest of the players that are in the Mountain West Conference this season. But offensively, I think we'll see a few other nuances from the offense. It's not just going to be as run heavy as it was last year. We'll be real interested to watch to see the keys to see if Maddox Madsen has matured as a passer. That's what it'll come down to.
Yeah, Collin put it in such a way that I agree. I'm not willing to pay the tax on Boise from a preseason perspective. We'll see. I actually hope they lose to USF and then all of a sudden the market overcorrects and we can start to get some better numbers, because if they go undefeated outside of that matchup against Notre Dame, it's very difficult to envision playing them. And this was a team that messed around. They played with their food at times last year in Mountain West Conference play. There was a few head scratcher games and some nervous moments, at least in the first half against teams that they should have absolutely outclassed from the very first snap. So we'll go, from a team that I think all of us are kind of in agreement.
Before you move on, what did Boise State do last year when they went to the Dirty South? They nearly got their ass beat by Georgia Southern because humidity, inexperience, I don't know what, but what South Florida wants to do against this Shenander defense, that's upset alert all the way. I would not be taking Boise State double digits first week. Yeah, I just want to get that out of there because they went to the Dirty South last year and they got played. So
yeah, Byron Brown, we know he's healthy game one, and
we hope.
we hope we've seen what he can do when he's healthy, and that offense, it's basically the old school Art Briles, haymakers to the final bell. So I could see some huge plays. There's a defense that has no problem giving them up. All right, we turn to a team that I think could be polarizing in this conversation. At least I'm hoping for some difference of opinion on the UNLV running Rebs. 11-3 last year, 6-1 in conference play. They lose twice to Boise. They did beat Cal 24-13 in the LA Bowl. They're 7-1 to win the Mountain West Conference. Their win total is sitting at 8.5. 2 starters returning, though, only one on each side of the ball, 129th in returning production. Dan Mullen comes into Sin City with an interesting reputation. He can really coach up offense, particularly the spread attacks. It started at Utah as a quarterback coach with Alex Smith, then at Florida with Tebow, then he does his magic at Mississippi State, and that really should count as a minor miracle. The very first college football playoff rankings, Mississippi State was number 1 in the country because of the work that he did with Dak Prescott and that offense. Hell, even Kyle Trask looked like a Heisman candidate under Mullen's tutelage. So he's great in terms of scheming things up and putting his quarterbacks in friendly systems. What he is not is a natural recruiter. We know this. He couldn't consistently recruit with the big boys in the SEC. Will that matter long-term at UNLV? We'll see. We'll see if he's even long for this job, good or bad. This could be a stepping stone, or he could, go back to the booth, go back to being a color commentator. What we know this year is they have very little experience returning, but a ton of high upside talent. That usually screams volatility. That's at least why I think we could be in different directions on this team. Jet Thomas is back at the running back position. He's on the Maxwell watch list because he's really shifty. He's got upside in the passing game, but the go-go is gone. And when you looked at some of his big runs last year, that playbook just opened up rushing lanes. With Haj Malik Williams, you always had to respect his legs in the rushing game, in the read game, in the option game. And the line replaces everyone. They were elite in the trench last year, 10th in line yards, and now they got all these new faces. On top of it, you got a QB battle that's going to persist into fall camp. Alex Orji has great tools. He's an elite runner. He's got a big arm, but he's so inaccurate. Can you trust him, or do you just go with like a 70-30 rushing attack with him as the starting quarterback? I don't know if that's necessarily what Mullen wants to do. And then we have Anthony Calandria, who obviously can win you games. There'll be moments where you're like, this guy is the truth. He's conference player of the year quality because of his gambling style. He's, can make plays off platform when things break down. But then also he can be a turnover machine. Last 2 years at Virginia, 28 big-time throws, great. 27 turnover-worthy plays, not great. Defensively, heart and soul guys like Jackson Woodard and Jalen Catalon are gone, and so too is defensive coordinator Zach Arnett, who left for personal reasons in April. Paul Gunther takes over play calling duties. He hasn't called a play in a college game in 25 years when we use the head coach of Ursinus. Go Bears. If that's a weird school to have on your CV, it's not if you're on Mullen's staff, because that's where he played his college football in the early 90s. He was a tight end. I think 8-4 is a successful year here. This is a program that broke through last year. This is not a perennial power, out west. Given the schedule that features UCLA, a tricky roadie to Miami of Ohio, another roadie at Boise. I like that they moved the Idaho State game up to week 0 because what it does is it gives them buys around that road trip to Oxford. 3 buys by October 25th. So in terms of trying to find some continuity, maybe juggling quarterbacks. If you make a switch and you have a bye week to work in somebody new, I think that's a huge benefit for a team with a new staff and new quarterbacks. But this defense could fall from top 30 nationally to barely top 75, in my opinion. So I'm going to go under the 8.5 here. I think there's a lot of moving parts. And, with some of these marquee hires, whether it's Bill Belichick in North Carolina or Mullen here in Sin City, I think there's high variance. I think there's a chance that they just don't connect. It doesn't hit. The quarterback play here in Las Vegas, I think, could be volatile and not in a good way. So what do you think, Colin? I'll go to you first on a team that you actually have a play in week 1, not to be confused with week 0. They're going to have, 2 games by the end of that first full Saturday.
Yeah, I think the first comment is Paul Gunther, do you automatically assume because there's so much NFL experience, there's no college football experience, that this is a downgraded DC? I will remind everybody that narrative floated around at Colorado with Robert Livingston. He came in from the Bengals, just absolutely cleaned house and made Colorado actually a good defensive team. So I don't think I automatically want to assume the defense is going to be bad until we see what we got on the field. Offensively, you're right. Alex Orji, like Michigan wouldn't allow him to throw. So are we going Tim Tebow, Dan Mullen offense, and we're going to run a little bit of, Wildcat package, Orji cat? I don't know. Or are we going to go with Tony Calandria, which I don't know. I mean, 50-yard passes or fumbles and interceptions. I mean, it's just like, come on, Calandria. I mean, seriously. Like, I have to watch 14 hours of football in a day and 130 something teams, and all it is 50-yard passes or interceptions. Like, I can't take my eyes off when you're playing because it's boom or bust, and you have to have full attention. So it's really tough with him. I mean, he's a deep ball specialist, 11-2, big time throw to turnover worthy play on passes over 20 yards. That shows what it is when he throws the bomb, but everything else has been garbage. Now, you mentioned Jaden Thomas. He heated up at the end of last year. I like what he did on the ground. You mentioned it was in the go-go, but 12 of his 21 explosive runs came in the last 4 games. He really got hot at the end of the season. I think that will continue into here. But there's only 25 starts of experience on the offensive line. They've got some serious work to do with a lot of inexperienced transfers coming in. And defensively for Gunther, who took the position after Zach Arnett was gone. Like you said, only one of the top 19 tacklers is back from last year. There's transfer names in there from big programs like LSU, Arizona State, Arizona. There's a Bama kid. There's a Uga kid. There's a Georgia kid. It's just guys that never got any playing time. So we'll see if that works out here, and we'll see if Dan Mullen can potentially have some sort of connection to the SEC to get some of those guys going. The great scheduling, it's a great schedule to start figuring out all of these questions, right? I mean, Sam Houston, Idaho State, Miami of Ohio. I think we'll get all of our answers about Orji and Calandria, about what kind of offense we're going to see here. But there's just too many questions for me to make a season-long determination about what kind of bet that I want to have on UNLV. But they do dodge San Jose State in conference play, and that is a big bonus here that could come into that. I don't know, we're using Harris poll again, whatever that crap is, to find out who's going to the Mountain West Conference game and hosting. So that might come back with San Jose State and UNLV. Back-to-back buys on the schedule to start October. That was the benefit of Idaho State being scheduled in week 3. And then that leads us into our play, because I have to have money on UNLV, even though they took the Rebel Roller, the slot machine, off the field. I don't know if anybody else knows this. I went to Mountain West Media Days last year, and I said, where is the Rebel Roller? I want that slot machine. It's bigger than like a field goal post. And whenever UNLV scores a touchdown, they pull it, right? A slot machine on the field in a college football game. So the guy that runs the Vegas Bowl told me that the NCAA made a phone call and said, no way. You are getting that off the field. It is sitting in a warehouse in Allegiant Stadium in a room by itself collecting dust. And I promise everybody out there, whether I get press credentials for the Vegas Bowl, another bowl game, a WrestleMania 41, 2, whichever one we're going to next year, if I get in the Allegiant Bowl, I will find the Rebel Roller. I will relieve it. I will free it from jail. So I want the Rebel Roller back on the field. All right, the play that we're going to make is going to be week 1 against Sam Houston. Sam Houston has to play Western Kentucky in week 0. That is going to be a god-awful game for Longo, for that offense and that defense, which, is putrid, horrible. They're going to get run up and down the field in a bunch of heat, and then they're going to turn around and try to play host to UNLV. What does UNLV do in week 1? Temperature-controlled Allegiant Stadium against Idaho State. They will not expose anything. They will go to Sam Houston, and they will take advantage of one of the worst defenses in all of college football, no matter if it's on the ground or through the air. I am not worried about Dan Mullen coaching X's and O's. against Phil Longo. The number that I make it is 15 and a half, 16. Number out in the market right now is 13 and a half. I don't think it closes 13 and a half. I think UNLV beats the piss out of Idaho State. I think Western Kentucky runs Sam Houston up a flagpole, and that number's sitting 17 and a half by close when we get to week one. UNLV minus 13 and a half week one because of what's going to happen in week zero.
I think we're in agreement on that week one play, but the rest of it, I still have my questions, my doubts in this offense. But I mean, really, either of the quarterbacks. I just think last year what Haj was able to do, one of the most underrated
Oh,
quarterbacks
yeah.
in the entire country, because everybody was looking at, oh, it's what Sluka did. That's why they started 3-0. And it's like he came in and he was obviously a better passer. And in some ways, more dynamic as a runner because he was able to run all the read stuff. It wasn't just quarterback design runs where Sluka would just pull it down and bowl people over, which, I mean, there's going to be plenty of value of that in the Sun Belt. But in terms of what Haj did, I don't think we can overstate how important it was. And they still pulled some rabbits out of their hat. They had some very close games. They nearly lost to Hawaii. So I think for a team that won double-digit games last year, I think they're being priced closer to that team, and just the dudes aren't there. The same roster does not exist. So what do you think, Duck? Are you down on them, or do you think this number is just about right?
That's a fascinating case study. I truly don't know. I think we've got so much variation of talent and coaching style and different coordinators that are coming in that we really truly have a mixed bag here and a little bit of a mystery with UNLV. Now, you can piecemeal together all of the different talent ads that they have from FCS and from the Power Four leagues that have come in at all different position groups, but it's still going to take some time to get this group to gel on the field. I think it's really advantageous for them that they move their Idaho State game to week zero because you'll have that game to kind of work out the kinks. And then I like the play at Sam Houston. I think we've already talked about Sam Houston State being a really descending defense. They're going to be an absolute mess. And they're not even playing games at home on their home field. They're playing an hour away in the soccer stadium. So there'll be very limited home field advantage, if any, for Sam Houston State throughout the entirety of this season. UNLV, though, yeah, I think when you look at who they're bringing in, can Calandria command the offense? Will they have enough of kind of a play package to try to get Alex Orgy on the field? I like Jet Thomas. He's kind of the lone holdover for explosivity from the offense from last season. There's a mixed bag at wide receiver, but there's an influx of talent from P4. So we'll see if those guys can all connect together. The offensive line is a complete overhaul, but I think that the talent is there. As long as they can gel and play cohesively, I think that they'll be just fine. And the same can be said about all three levels of the defense as well. I don't know if it's a benefit or if it's a hindrance to have an NFL DC in Paul Gunther, who has to now work with some of the challenges of coaching college athletes as opposed to having all the control over everything that goes on in the lives of NFL players. But to be determined on that. I think this is probably going to be a very competitive group in Mountain West play. I think UNLV will be a team that'll have their hand in it when all is said and done because of the teams that are on their Mountain West schedule. I think Air Force provides some challenges when they go to UNLV on October 11th after Vegas has to go to Laradice and play that game in elevation. So that could be a little bit of a tricky spot. And then they're going to also be peaking to that road trip against Boise State. So really outside of that, I mean, they should probably breeze through the next five in their schedule and probably have a very successful season. I think 8-4 seems about right for this group, unless everything clicks, and then they'll be stronger than that.
Football season is here, folks, and we've got some huge improvements and updates coming on the award-winning Action Network app, which we're very excited to discuss in the coming weeks. But to get the most out of the app, you still need to be an Action Pro subscriber. It's only with Action Pro you get real-time pick updates and alerts from me, Duck, Collin, Stuckey, the entire Action Network team of experts. Plus, you can access pro projections powered by Sean Kerner and our predictive analytics team, plus a million other benefits. And right now, BBOC listeners can save $20 off their annual price of Action Pro. Just go to actionnetwork.com/pro and use code BBOC20. That's actionnetwork.com/pro. Use code BBOC20 for $20 off the annual price of Action Pro. We mentioned this team a few times already. Let's get to the San Jose State Spartans. Ken Niumatalolo. really showed that he could, change his stripes. He went from the option offensive Navy to the spread and shred last year in the Bay Area. It worked. They went 7-6, albeit 3-4 in conference play. They lost in overtime in a thriller to South Florida, 41-39 in the Hawaii Bowl. They're plus 850 to win the conference here. Their win total is set at 7.5. They have 9 starters returning, 5 on offense, 4 on defense, 63rd overall in returning production. Is the spread and shred and Craig Stutzman more than Nick Nash? That's the question. I'm going to start with you, Duck. And also, is Walker Eget really that much of a huge upgrade over Emmett Brown? Emmett Brown's gone out of the program. He got injured a little bit. He's banged up and then lost his starting job to Eget last year. So the question is, is their ceiling high enough with Eget offensively? And considering the fact that they're missing Boise, they're missing UNLV, 3 winnable non-conference, games as well. I don't know. Just talk me through exactly how good you think this team could be, because there's some buzz in the preseason. Some people think they will be there in the conference title game, and maybe if everything goes right and they get a little bit better defensively, maybe they could slow down Boise and throw a scare at them in the conference championship game.
Yeah, a lot going on with San Jose State. Obviously, Ken Niumatalolo transitioned this program really well after the departure of Brett Brennan after the 2023 season, and they committed to that spread and shred system, which worked really well given the talent that they had in the receiver room last year. I think the system masked a below-average offensive line that really struggled to open up holes in the ground game through the majority of the campaign. Major losses at receiver with Lockhart and Nick Nash are going to require this group to at least attempt to be more balanced in 2025. I think they have 3 excellent options at tailback. A better, more reliable ground game should help improve middling red zone performance and keep this San Jose State Spartan bunch out of third down, where they existed far too frequently last season. And the interesting thing is that the coaching staff is committed to this pivot. So I think we'll see them try to run the ball with a little bit more effectiveness. There's lots of optimism defensively, given the intestinal fortitude that the stop unit showed against the run last season, parlayed with the havoc numbers of 25 sacks and 93 tackles for loss secured. The front 7 is going to have to show out again this year, as the losses in the secondary are glaring. Power 4 and JUCO transfers in the secondary look to fill the void, but this secondary is just still going to take some time to gel. I think the schedule is forgiving, with 3 winnable games in the non-conference and a Mountain West Conference slate that's free of Boise State, Colorado State, and UNLV. With a respectable showing against Texas, this San Jose State group is looking to pile up the wins and try to make their case to the College Football Playoff Committee that if they were to go 11-1 with a conference championship victory over Boise State, that would merit the Spartans to be in the conversation. I don't know if it works out as magically as that, but I think the schedule is forgiving. If the pivot to at least attempting to be a little bit more balanced and run the football more effectively helps with red zone production, which was poor at times last season, if that connects, I think that'll help protect a little bit defensively, because they did play they just had a lot of games last year where the defense kind of wore down late and it was just a little bit of a struggle. I think that this group could rack up the wins. I would go over 7.5. I think you've got obviously that Texas game in week 2 that they don't have to win, but they need a good showing. And then there's 2 spots where they go to Wyoming and go to Utah State back-to-back in elevation, where maybe they have some tired legs there. Outside of that, the rest of the way, I mean, Ken Niumatalolo knows how to defend the option, so they always have the upper hand against Air Force. They get Hawaii, Nevada, San Diego State. I think this is a pretty favorable schedule for San Jose State this season.
When you look at the coaching talent, Collin, in this conference, sometimes lost in the shuffle, I think, was Niumatalolo. Like, this guy did such a good job over, almost 2 decades in Annapolis. Comes in, there was, speculation right from the jump. Is it going to be an option offense? He, proves that he can change philosophically. He can give, the keys to the offense over to someone else. And it worked. I don't understand why there's not more buzz for this team. Like, maybe it's, the fact that it's a West Coast team. It's not a power conference team, obviously. And they weren't right there in the thick of it last year to win this conference. But you seem to like them to at least to get there. Talk me through the price point cutoff for you, and what makes them, so tantalizing to play spoiler to a team like Boise.
Yeah, I mean, I think the price point is right. 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 I think the
I mean, I make the projected win total 7.6 and the numbers at 7.5. So from a win total perspective, I don't think there's a bet there, but I do think there's a massive wager here to make. And the way that we should play this is an angle at the conference. But let's talk about why Ken was so good last year. It's because he immediately went hands off on the offense and said, we are going to go with the Nick Rolovich run and shoot version of the spread and shred. I loved what he did at Hawaii. I loved what he did at Washington State. Let's go get Craig Stutzman, have him run it. And it was just played beautifully. I mean, you just get it to Nick Nash. Didn't matter which quarterback it was. But if you look at Walker Agget's numbers on the advanced, 17 to 8 big time throws to turnover worthy plays. That tells me it wasn't all Nick Nash. I mean, Nick Nash obviously a huge part of the offense, but the fact that when Walker Agget could get it down the field and make throws that he had to, he did. And I think when you say, well, they're not going to be as electric at the wide receiver position, there's a player on this roster, wide receiver Danny Scudero comes in from Sacramento State, just crazy numbers, and we need to start paying attention when players transfer from Sacramento State, right? Cam Scadaboo, when they get into FBS, I mean, we don't know what we're getting. It could be a very high ceiling. There's a lot of power four wide receivers on this roster to do this spread and shred, and I don't know particularly if it's going to be more of a run attack because they do kind of lose a lot of offensive linemen. Now, the good news is they have 32 offensive line starts coming back, and one of those is a full-time starter at the blindside tackle position. I think that is really good for them, whether they're going to run or pass, they can lean on him. This is the seventh fastest offense in the nation, which means I don't need you to hold your pass blocks very long because we want to get rid of the ball as fast as we possibly can. So I have a lot of optimism, more than some people that think that the Nick Nash disappearance, not being there, is going to be a step back. I'm not really so sure it is. Now, defensively, they're going to be good at all three levels. They are going to be a top three unit at the defensive line, linebacker, and secondary position within the Mountain West Conference. Middle linebacker Jordan Pollard is the captain. He brings back 115 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, just solid defense up and down, back and forth. And I think that's going to give them similar numbers in what they had last year. Not saying they were great. It did defend explosive plays pretty well. They were 30th in line yards defensively, so I think we can expect some of the same. Now, Duck mentioned it. The star of this team is the schedule. There's no Boise. It's Colorado State's schedule last year. Why did Colorado State go 6-1? Because they didn't play a damn person, right? No Boise State, no UNLV on this schedule. They hit the lottery. They have the easiest path to the Mountain West Conference game. Conference road games, going to elevation, going to play maybe in weather. Well, you're getting the bottom rung of the entire conference. Wyoming, Utah State, Nevada, San Diego State. These are not going to be tough conference road games whatsoever. The play is some of the books out there. One of the big national prominent books, you can pay me to say their name, has to make the championship game. San Jose State plus 220 to make the championship game is not a unit play for me. It's a 2-unit play for me. I love that because they're not going to be challenged in this conference schedule whatsoever. And there won't be any tiebreakers with UNLV and Boise State, heads up, because they're not going to play them.
We turn to another team that I think could be an interesting candidate to get there. You just mentioned it. They had the cakiest schedule in the Mountain West Conference last year. The Colorado State Rams. They go 8-5, 6-1 in conference play. They get knocked around in the Arizona Bowl by Miami of Ohio, losing 43-17. They are 19-1 to win this conference. Win total is sitting at 6.5. 5 returning starters, 4 on offense, 1 on defense. 92nd in returning production, 57th on offense. Let's start here. Who are you, Colorado State? Because year one of the Norvell offensive system, 50-50 run-pass split. Year two, 61% passing, which was the 5th most pass-happy team in the country. Then last year it flips, running at 53% of the time. Can we trust them to run the football again? According to offseason reports, no. Norvell wants to open it up again. And that's interesting to me because Braden Fowler and Nicolosi did not look great when facing quality secondaries last season. I'll skip over the Texas game. But the Colorado game and their bowl game against Miami, Ohio, QBR of 12.4 and 44.6 respectively. The line finished 100th in line yards, returns just 2 starters there. So a midseason pivot back to the run doesn't seem like a simple switch to me. I'm down on the offensive ceiling. I think, the defense did make some key additions, starting with DC Tyson Summers. I really like that hire. He was the takeaway king at Western. He created 78 takeaways in 3 years at Western Kentucky. They add in Jocks Donut Evans, who previously starred for him at Western Kentucky. He had 14 tackles for loss in his first season with Summers as the Hilltoppers DC. Now, Mukundi Wa Kalunje and Evans could be one of the best pass rushing duos in the Mountain West Conference. Jacob Ellis also comes in, shores up the linebacking core coming in from Iowa State. The secondary, though, all new starters. This is where I put a little bit of faith in Summers, saying, yeah, we're going to give up some big plays, but we're going to balance it out with the turnovers. Norvell has improved his win total from 3 to 5 to 8, and then a 6-1 finish in conference play last season. Nothing crazy in terms of road travel, even in the non-conference, in terms of the mileage they're putting in and the spots. I like them to get to 7 wins. It could be 8 if they take down Wazoo at home in late September, but I think that's the absolute ceiling for this team. I'm not interested at 19-1 for them to win the conference. I need at least 30-1 to consider that. Let me go first to you, Colin, in terms of Norvell, someone we've talked ad nauseum about, talking about the boys from Fort Collins. The issue is, what do they want to be? Do they have the personnel to do that? Torrey Horton's not there anymore for Fowler Nicolosi, and I just didn't see the progression last year. So I don't have a ton of faith in the quarterback. That makes it difficult to get fired up for a G5 team.
Well, there is no other head coach in all of my media day travels that sets time aside and gives me 30 minutes to talk to me about everything under the sun about their team and shows me pictures of their golf trips to Europe. So I love Jay Norvell, and I will say I don't think I've taken an under on this team since he took over. Like when he moved over, I have been betting this team hardcore. I think I had a couple 40-1s to win the conference last year just because I knew how soft the schedule was. That comes to an end, Coach Norvell, and I apologize, but I make the number 5.5. That's well below what the market is, and there's really a lot of reasons for that. Now, I know the offense went run heavy last year, but that was injury related, right? When Torrey Horton gets hurt, and a lot of your wide receivers get hurt, they really had nothing else to do but run the ball, and they did it great. But now we're going to switch back to the other side with Braden Fowler Nicolosi. And when you have him, you need dynamic receivers. I'm not sure Armani Winfield is the guy at the wideout position. 1.4 yards per route run. And if you don't understand what that metric is, 2 is where you're considered explosive. 1.4, you're just not getting separation. You're not doing much after you get the ball. That has to improve. Now, from the running back perspective, if they do decide to run the ball, I'm not really impressed with what we have coming in there. Running back Justin Marshall was the go-to guy last year, but he was surpassed by Tulsa transfer Lloyd Avant during the spring game. I mean, Marshall's numbers were okay, 3.3 yards after first contact with a lot of zone read last year, but Avant comes in just one explosive run against an FBS defense last year. Lloyd Avant played 11 games against FBS defenses and created one explosive run for Tulsa. And he just made 10 missed tackles. He forced 10 missed tackles in 11 games. So I don't like what the offense has whatsoever. I don't think they're explosive at the wideout position. They don't really have what they need to have at the running back position. And Braden Fowler Nicolosi needs explosive targets to get it to. 2 of the top 11 tacklers on defense are back. There's plenty of position battles that are going to be figured out here in fall camp as we come up. There's senior transfers in there. I've mentioned that already on this podcast. Like when your defense and your depth chart are seniors that have never have big playing time at other programs and they've transferred in this case for Colorado State from Iowa State and SMU, it means they can never get on the field, whether it's from a talent perspective. But if you're blocked for 3 or 4 years, even you got pandemic years in your resume and you haven't been on the field, that doesn't mean you're a high quality player. No disrespect, but I don't see a lot coming out of this team. The schedule completely flips. Tougher than 2024. You're going to Boise. You have back-to-back travel weeks before hosting Air Force in the finale. No, thank you. I think the triple option is going to eat you up at the end of the year. Under 6.5. I know it's juicy -155. So if you can find an alt under 6, I'd take that too.
What do you think, Duck? Do you have an official play?
I don't have an official play, but I have official concerns. I'm really concerned about just the ambiguity of the direction of this offense and what they want to define for the trajectory of 2025. And I think that they've just got so much that needs to be ironed out. Fowler Nicolosi, there is something to be said about the offensive line coming together, and they have really improved in their pass blocking from year to year. They gave up 59 sacks. a couple of years ago, down to I think 14 last season. So it was really an improvement in their pass blocking, but they also didn't pass the ball as much, and they were much more balanced, and even, dare I say, a little run heavy at the end of last season. I think there's just too many landmines on the schedule for me to really get excited about this Colorado State team really racking up the wins. I think that we'll even possibly see what the output is from the offensive unit after their bye week, after they play Northern Colorado. I think they'll have some sort of plan in place, but it may not look very good against Washington. And then they'll go out and pound a really bad Big Sky opponent in Northern Colorado. Then they'll get the bye week. But then UTSA and Wazoo are going to certainly be no gimmies. Then you got to go to San Diego State. I love that spot at the end of the season where you're hosting Air Force after back-to-backs, including Boise State. It just seems like this schedule is not going to be conducive. I kind of thought last season that this Colorado State team was really fortuitous in beating up against the bottom four teams in Mountain West play. And I kind of had a bad taste left in my mouth after the performance we saw in the Arizona Bowl against Miami of Ohio. I think there's just too much for me in question to really get excited about that. And Collin had mentioned it. You could see with what they did in the transfer portal, they're attempting, but is this a fool's gold situation? Are they grasping at straws? Are they grasping at players that really don't have a lot of productivity anywhere? And so adds to the mixed bag. I think maybe it's 6-6 and they're trying just to get to a bowl game in their final season in the Mountain West, but I'm not exceedingly excited about this Colorado State team at all.
Let's see if you guys are buyers on this next one. Fresno State, the Bulldogs, 6-7 last season, 4-3 in conference play. They lost to Northern Illinois in the Potato Bowl by 8. 12-1 to win the conference. Win total sitting at 6.5. 7 starters returning, 4 on offense, 3 on defense. 116th though in returning production, outside the top 100 on both sides of the ball. They bring in Matt Entz. He's a winner, plain and simple, and he took my preferred route for a coach jumping up from FCS. He had to stop as a coordinator at the FBS level first when he was coordinating USC's defense last fall. Duck, you're the FCS expert, so talk me through what you expect from him as he goes more to a ground and pound, run-centric offense.
Well, first thing, I think it's a home run hire for Fresno State long term, and I think that he made an exquisite job with his coordinators. Josh Davis out of the University of South Dakota will be fantastic with the offense this system tries to run. And then defensive coordinator Nick Benedetto comes over from Northern Illinois. We'll get to that in just a second. But Fresno State offensively is going to be exceedingly slow pace. They're going to use a lot of 12 personnel, which is common in the game of football. 1 running back, 2 tight ends. They're going to use 13 personnel. They're going to have a lot of big bodies out there to try to run the football, and they're going to run it, and they're going to run it, and they're going to run it some more. You'll see EJ Warner with some play action off of that to the tight end game. But this is all going to be about mucking these games up, truncating them, slowing them down, possessing the football, and controlling the line of scrimmage on both sides. I think offensively, they definitely have some pieces. I like Gilliam coming back for Fresno State in the running back room along with Bryson Donaldson. They definitely made an attempt to try to pluck some talented wide receivers in the portal, and so we'll kind of see how that shakes out. But if you look at the tight end room, they've got 4 tight ends that are big-bodied, athletic tight ends that are going to be matchup nightmares, I think, in Mountain West play for Fresno State. Kind of their secret weapon will be what they have in the tight end room. We'll see how the blended offensive line ends up shaking out. I think, if the system can connect and they can really grasp the keys at the line of scrimmage pre-snap, I think it'll look a little better. And you'll know right away after these first couple of games for Fresno State, including when they go to Kansas and when they host Georgia Southern, that this is going to be a significantly different offensive platoon than what we've seen from Fresno State in the past, really getting back to a Fresno State power football identity. Defensively, Nick Benedetto comes in, and I thought he did really good things at Northern Illinois. If you just look at some of the low-hanging fruit metrics, I mean, they were 27% on third down defense last year, which was tops in the MAC, and they really bowed up well in the red zone. 36 red zone attempts defensively, only 16 touchdowns, 12 field goals, and 10 empty possessions. So, I mean, it was really, they were good when they needed to be on the money downs and in the red zone. They have an influx of talent defensively that I think they'll be able to scheme it up and do actually pretty well in this conference. I didn't go over the win total, but if this really connects and if the power football game is humming and if the bodies are elite, that I think we're going to see some good football out of Fresno State this year. I'm pretty high on this group. The trip to Boise will be tough. The trip to Colorado State, yeah, we'll see. I think it's kind of a bad matchup for CSU. They don't have to go to Laradice. They get Wyoming at home. They get Utah State in the back end of the schedule. I think this is a team that can certainly go bowling and could surprise some people in Mountain West play this year. So I think the coordinator hires and the head coaching hires are A+ for Fresno State long term, and I think they'll be better than expected this year.
One of the biggest portal pieces of news for Fresno, by the way, keeping Alzillian Hamilton inside the program because he entered the portal, but then he came back. I don't think you can overstate how important that was because he's by far their best cover corner, and they're going to face some quality passing attacks. Georgia Southern, Hawaii, Boise, San Jose State, like they're going to need him to be able to lock down a top guy so they can be a little bit more multiple in the back end and what they're bringing blitz-wise. I can't get to 7 wins with confidence, but I am confident in the tempo change and playing a lot of unders and a defense that has a high upside with a play caller that I really like. Colin, any thoughts overall on the team or EJ Warner, who we haven't even mentioned
Right.
because the system doesn't put as much pressure on the quarterback? You could go way back and look at his Temple days and say that he had a high upside. You look at, flaming out last season. I think people are a little bit too harsh on the kid, but what are your thoughts about him being QB1 for the Bulldogs?
Well, the change to 13 personnel always helped Iowa State quarterbacks. So keep that in mind. And I think there are things to say about EJ Warner because there are positives in his numbers, even though it was a very vanilla, not the season I expected out of Rice. By the way, thank you. Like, it was my biggest win total, 6.5. They got to 6 wins, of course, because they played with their food for the beginning of the season. Anyways, that was a lot of EJ Warner. So first, let's start off here. I think Matt Ince is a perfect hire. Like Duck said, we're going to get that North Dakota State offense going. They're going to get 1,000 yards in returning experience and 11 TDs from running back Elijah Gilliam and Bryson Donaldson, which I think is absolutely going to power this offense and that 13 personnel. They're going to have tight ends shifting all over the place and laying blocks on people. EJ Warner, though, that I want to talk about is when he does throw. Every single season he has played, his turnover worthy play rate has been cut from 4.7% down to 3.5%. He is getting better in the mistakes category, and that is expected with age. And it's not going the other direction, even though the numbers at Rice weren't as great as what we thought. Now, there is no go-to wide receiver here. I think that's going to take time, and it could be a tight end. So we'll figure out what they got going offensively. The problem is this isn't a schedule where you really have a lot of time to figure out what it is you're going to do on offense. Fresno is expected to have the best secondary in the Mountain West Conference, and you mentioned it. Well, they have two havoc makers at the edge positions. That's always going to help. But then Azilian Hamilton, 13 PBUs by himself last year. That is 7th in the nation individually. He is a shutdown corner, which is why I love Fresno taking on Georgia Southern in week 1 on August 30th. That would absolutely be on the radar for a play just for that, just because of what JC French and Jalso wants to do. Non-easy schedule for this offense, like I said. I mean, you have Kansas and Oregon State here, 2 of the first 3 games. That's going to be tough. I mean, road trips to both of those places. And, Kansas is going to return to pounding the ball and Jalen Daniels. That's going to be a little bit tough for the front 7 of this Fresno team. Georgia Southern, like I mentioned, is a sneaky game you want to get into, especially with what they want to do in the air. And Fresno, what Duck did not mention about this schedule, the most gratuitous part about this schedule is that they have 3 Mountain West Conference home games on a bye week. Nevada, San Diego State, Wyoming. From October to November 15th, they have 3 Mountain West Conference games at home off a bye week. That is a huge advantage. What's the problem? I don't know if they can win a road game, right? San Jose State on the road, Boise, Colorado State in elevation, Island, you never know, right? You show up and crazy shit happens down there. Just depends on the NACOA Alumni Association who they paid off that night. So I think the play for me is going to be over 6.5 minus 130. I do make this 7 exactly on the dot, but I have not played it yet because it's so close. Like, if it's a half win total away from my projection, usually just kind of table it and I'll think about it later. But if you go over on 6.5 with Fresno State, your hedge game absolutely is September 20th on the island. That game should be within range of money line-ish to get away from this.
All right, let's close out the first half of this Mountain West preview. We're going to cut this up into 2 episodes with the Air Force Falcons, 5-7 last season, 3-4 in conference play, 14-1 to win the Mountain West this fall. Win total sitting at 5.5, right there at bowl eligibility. 9 starters returning, 6 on offense, 3 on defense. 72nd in returning production, 27th on offense, though. Last season showed the value of having a veteran coach and having players that couldn't just walk off the campus and, get on their phones and hit the transfer portal. That's one of the few benefits of being a service academy. A 1-7 start usually triggers an abandoned ship metaphor Wait, that's not right with the Service Academy. Triggers a desire to eject from the cockpit. That's better. Troy Calhoun got them playing really good football late. 8-point win at home against Fresno, a 28-point blowout over Oregon State, a 3-point road win at Nevada, an 11-point road win at San Diego State to close things out. And now Dylan Carson, the hammer at that fullback position, is back with a line blocking for him that returns 3 full-time starters and 2 more with starting experience. Cade Harris returns as that versatile weapon. He's out wide on the perimeter catching passes. He's taken sweeps and reverses in the run game as well. Josh Johnson is set to start at quarterback. He's light on in-game experience, but he at least has been in the system running this with scout team's second team for 3 years. He has the athleticism. We'll see if he pushes all the right buttons, puts it all together. Bucknell and Utah State critically are defenses that they face in the first 2 weeks. That could be a little extended preseason for Johnson and this offensive unit. Full stop, though. I trust Brian Noor at DC. Great defenses in 2022, 2023, and even with being hung out to dry at the beginning of the season last year when the offense absolutely stunk, still finished top 50 in scoring, 27th against the pass, really good at limiting explosives. The entire trench is back, all seniors, so I expect them to be fundamentally sound up front. Linebackers weren't full-time starters, but of that group, the 3 players, 9 starts spread across them per last year, so they're not totally green. This is where coaching matters the most, though. The secondary is green. Can he protect them from a play calling perspective? San Jose State is the only passing attack that really scares me on the back half of the schedule. And when I look at the schedule overall, I'm going to chalk up losses to Boise, at UNLV, and at San Jose State. Put those aside for a second. I think a split against Navy and Army is doable, in my opinion. I'm picking them to return to a bowl. 6 or 7 wins. I'm going to go over on the win total because 4 of these games could be absolute cakewalks. Can they steal a couple? We know the staff knows how to do it, and I just have faith in a team that did not quit last year. And in the modern college football, particularly the G5 level, teams just throw their hands up in the air and they quit. The team, loses the locker room. Guys are looking for the portal. That's not what you're going to get with this Air Force team. If Johnson is even a B- quarterback, I think this team goes bowling. Collin, I'll shoot it to you first. What do you think about the Service Academy getting it all flying in the right direction this year?
Yeah, this was the hottest team we were betting down the stretch. I mean, I think Stuckey and I just flipped on the microphones and said, betting Air Force this week, right? I mean, hottest team, covered 4 straight, covered 5 straight at the end of the season. Now they get 4 of their top 5 rushers back. You've already mentioned like some of the power that they have coming back with Dylan Carson. No answers at quarterback coming back. Now in the spring game, they did take their fullback, Kemper Hodges, and they stuck him in at quarterback. Now, I'm kind of a fan of this. Like if you have a backup fullback and you can use your fullback to play quarterback, I mean, we're thumping here, right? We're going to be thumping some heads. So we'll see what they do at the quarterback position. We'll see who's running the triple, but it's always going to be efficient. It's always going to catch a lot of these teams off guard, especially ones that have terrible front sevens. The interior lineman, the strength of the D is on the interior lineman with Peyton Zdroik and Aiden Swartz. But new linebackers, new corners, that's going to be limitations against teams that can throw on them. So I think that there's going to be a couple of teams in conference play that's really going to give them some troubles. But at the same time, there are teams that are not going to be able to take advantage of that. Hawaii and Boise both have defensive front sevens to clog the triple. Hawaii's, we haven't got there yet, but like their best aspect is the fact of their defensive line and their middle linebackers. So I get a little pause in that. Boise, we know, is an elite defense. So that is something where they're going to be able to defend the triple. But both of them come to Colorado Springs, and that is a hell of an elevation pull for Hawaii. There are pitfalls on this schedule. Now, I have it at 6.5. We're sitting at a really juice 5.5, which was really 6. But going to Las Vegas after the Navy game, no thanks. You go to Vegas, like you're sunk the second you get there, but you're going there after your, rivalry game after Navy. So a weird UConn game in November after going to San Jose, like how much do you care about that game? So I do like the over. I wouldn't play it at the 5.5 minus 170. It should be about 60, 70 cents less if you can find a 6 out there. But your hedge game, absolutely 100%, is going to come against UConn on November 15th, because that game, I think I power rated about minus 1.5 in favor of UConn, which means you can take a money line on that side and get out of that win total if you need to. Because these last 2 games are winners, right? New Mexico, winner. Colorado State, that is such a horrible spot for Colorado State when you look at their schedule. Air Force going there will chew them apart on the front 7. So, and you're right, they're highly motivated and they'll never give up. And if they're not going to a bowl, like it'll be they'll win that game anyways because they'll be motivated to be the last game of the season. So I like the over here. I wouldn't pay -170. Try to look for a 6 at about pick'em numbers. And keep an eye on that quarterback situation, Calabrese. I mean, a fullback running quarterback, I kind of like that.
What do you think, Duck? Do you put more stock in the offensive line having a ton of starts coming back, or are you troubled by the quarterback situation?
On both. I don't think I saw any more extreme dichotomy in any one team last season than what I saw from Air Force the first 8 games of the schedule compared to the last 4. They really tipped their hand against FCS Merrimack when they couldn't get push on the offensive line. They couldn't run for explosive plays against Merrimack. They only scored 21 points. And then the next 7 games of the schedule, it just looked terrible. The offensive line was sluggish. There was no attitude. There was no intensity that we're used to seeing from Air Force football. And it showed in the win column as they lost 7 in a row, and the team just looked dead in the water and pathetic. And I would love to know what Troy Calhoun said to that offensive line in between their Army loss and when they played Fresno State, because it was like there was completely different talent along the offensive line. The blocks were sharp. They were pissed off. They were playing with attitude, and that continued significantly the next 4 weeks. It was just stunning to see the difference that last 4 weeks. If you go back and put on the tape, it's almost like it was completely new players along the offensive line. So it was very, very stunning. I think that momentum will continue into this season, and I look to play Air Force early as long as they can shake out the quarterback situation and they can get someone in there that can command that triple option offense and get that humming like we've come to know and love with Air Force football. I think this team is a play on against the number against Bucknell. I think they'll destroy Utah State. Catching enough points, they could be a play against Boise. Hosting Hawaii, I think they're definitely a play. Hawaii will be on their 6th game in a row. I think when they host Wyoming, that'll be a play. Wyoming will have the battle for the boot with Colorado State up next, possibly the last battle for the boot for some time because Colorado State's changing conferences. We don't know if that'll continue. I think the New Mexico spot is a play on for Air Force. I absolutely have the Yukon spot circled in red ink as a fade spot. That's a strange out of conference trip. It doesn't mean a ton to what Air Force wants to accomplish this season, and it's hard for me to see them showing up in what will be senior day for Yukon. So I think that's a fade spot. But otherwise, I think this Air Force team is going to look a lot like the last 4 games of last season as opposed to the first 7 or 8 games that we saw this Falcon team. This is a team that I think has positive trajectory. I have not played their win total over, but I definitely think 6-6 is the floor.
Hawaii Rainbow Warriors 5-7 last season, 3-4 in conference play. They are 19-1 to win the conference this year. Their win total sitting at 5.5. So do they get to bowl eligibility or not? 13 starters returning, 6 on offense, 7 on defense, 61st overall in returning production, 67th on O, 53rd on D. 3 wins, 5 wins, and then 5 wins last fall. Some heartbreakers, a 3-point loss to UCLA and San Diego State, and a near miss in an upset of UNLV, losing 29-27. Can they break through under Timmy Chang and finally get there, get to a winning season, at least to a bowl? It could be as simple as Micah Alihado at quarterback. Can he be that breakout star? The last time we saw the lefty, he had moxie. He had the quick release. He's running that run and shoot to a T. But he's only 5'10". He did go nuclear against New Mexico. We know what New Mexico's defense was last year, which was the Pits, but truly nuclear. 469 total yards, 5 touchdowns. The thing is, I'm overwhelmed with positivity, and I know that Hawaii is one of those teams that gamblers just love. We have all those warm, fuzzy memories of the late night break glass in case of emergency, bet over, and the Colt Brennan Hawaii teams, just high scoring games that could bail you out after a really lousy Saturday, play until 3 in the morning. So I understand that I'm a little bit biased, but when I look at what's around Alihado, he returns Nick Senecal. Pofele Ashlock, Stanford transfer Jackson Harris at wide receiver, a 4-star prospect, 6'3", gives them Nick Nash-esque perimeter weaponry. Like everyone was talking about this kid. So now if they truly have 3 really good wide receivers, they got this Hawaiian savior in Alihado. 3 starters up front. They added a 2-year starter from Tulsa, and Ethan Spencer slides in at right guard after making 4 starts at center last year. I got all the pieces. I got a line that I kind of believe in. I got the weapons. I got the quarterback. I think this could be a top 6 offense at the Mountain West Conference if they protect him. No one gets hurt up front. It's always an issue historically with Hawaii. They don't have that depth in the trenches. Defense, though, it wore down last year. They gave up 112 points in the final 3 games, but this entire secondary is back, including Verdell Edwards II, who could be a pro. The Lions Den, that's what they call their linebacking core, has a lot of experience. Their top 2 tacklers back there. They're really relying on Luther McCoy to be a difference maker in the trenches at defensive tackle. If he is, some of these power rushing attacks that they're going to face, all of a sudden, they're not quite as imposing if he's a difference maker at D tackle. He came in from Minnesota. He was the talk of the spring on the defensive side of the ball. Edge rushers have experience, but they need more in terms of quarterback pressure. They only got 27 sacks last year. I'm talking a lot about this team because I love this team. I think they're going to, vie for 6 or 7 wins this year. I think they are going to go to a bowl game. I would love to pull the trigger on them to win the conference, but 19-1 is nowhere near close enough. I need at least 40-1. We've thrown flyers around on this program like Colorado State in recent years at 40-1. I feel like they're in that window. But as I said, I see them going bowling, from just a starting 22 perspective. I don't think they're going to be outclassed all that often this season. No Boise on the schedule, and even if they lose at Arizona, San Jose State, Colorado State, UNLV, that leaves them with 8 games where they're either favored or a dog by less than a touchdown, over 5.5, firing it in. Go to you first, Colin. I think you disagree with me, so let's play a little bit of high school debate here.
I'm gonna be back with a pot of cold water with a bunch of ice in it and throw it on you through the camera here. I make the win total 4.6. It's well below the market. I think there were a lot of things that, from an experience perspective, scheduling perspective, PR perspective, a lot of things that I tweaked their numbers with that really kind of came up to this number. And hey, Timmy, I love you, and it's been fun playing blackjack at Circa, but you're 2-15 on the road away from the island. It's just not been good, what your record has been when you get away. And that really kind of plays into like, can you win on the road? Now, you're right on the offensive side, Mika Alejado, all these things he did against New Mexico in this highlight reel, but 63 dropbacks. I mean, if you gave me 63 dropbacks, I think I could get a touchdown. I probably could scramble a little bit. I'm getting pretty old, but I think I could with 63 dropbacks. And I think Pavel Ashlock, like, can we return to form from what he was 2 years ago? I mean, he was the Shager bomb guy, right? And now we're looking at a really subpar year and what he put up numbers perspective. So we'll see what they can do on the offensive side. The top 5 tacklers do return to the defense. One of the best front sevens in Mountain West Conference. I mentioned that against teams that want to run the ball, like Air Force wants to run the triple. Well, Hawaii's got some dudes, they got the bloodline there to go ahead and plug up those holes and get them stopped. Safety Burdell Edwards, he's got to get back to 2023 levels after so much injury. He had 9 PBUs. We'll see if he can return. Like I said, Timmy Chang, 2-15 away from the island, and that might not change here. I mean, we're traveling to Arizona. We're traveling to Air Force. We're traveling to Colorado State. That is high elevation. San Jose State is no joke from from what they can do offensively and defensively. UNLV, look, I mean, we're trying to guess what UNLV's offense is going to be, but again, this is a Dan Mullen versus Timmy Chang X's and O's, and I'm just going to, say that that's probably not a good thing for the Warriors. Hawaii will play half of their schedule by the end of September. Look at this schedule. I mean, by September 27th, half your schedule is gone. So you've played 6 weeks in a row, and where do you go on that 6th week? To Air Force. Like, you got to be thinking bye. Right? I need a bye week. I need a bye week. I played 6 weeks in a row and it's still September and it's really hot and you're going to Air Force to try and defend that. A lot of things that I have problems with on this schedule. So I think it's a tougher schedule than what we're talking about. 36 offensive line starts coming back. They were 133rd in creating contested catches last year. That's nearly dead last. So there's just a lot of problems that I have all over this roster and what Timmy does on the road. So I'm going under 5.5 at plus money, plus 116. I make it 4.6.
All right, Duck, what do you think? I'm chalking up a ton of road losses already off the top. So that would be my counterpoint to this. I'm not expecting them to, go ahead and score road wins at Arizona or San Jose State or UNLV. Colorado State, Air Force, I mean, quarterback play, I think that puts them in the conversation. And a lot of these losses, when you talk about in totality of what Timmy Chang has done, it's before he really got all the pieces. I think it's inarguable that this is the best offense that he can put on the field, and the pieces they've been able to add strategically. It's very rare for a G5 program to get a wide receiver like they got from Stanford, a 4-star kid. He could be somebody, I really believe, who could be a Nick Nash kind of transformational difference maker in this passing game. What do you think? Are you with Colin with the cold water, or do you want to have, some kind of tropical drink, maybe with a fun umbrella in it with some pineapple, and join me here on the island being pro Hawaii?
Well, the constituents in Hawaii love Timmy Chang. They've rallied culturally around him and for what he's doing for the brotherhood in Hawaii. And so it's interesting to see that the success on the field during his tenure there has not been what you would expect, despite having the backing of the administration. I'm stunned that for a guy who ran the run and shoot offense so successfully during his time as a player there, it never really did get running with Braden Shager at quarterback at Hawaii. It just seemed like this offense was just continually stuck in the mud. They couldn't really put drives together. They were terrible on third down, which is critical in the run and shoot offense. They struggled in the red zone. We saw the Shager bombs connect at times, but we also saw a lot of incomplete passes and throwaways and Braden Shager running for his life. And it just really didn't ever connect during his time here. I'm going to just pump the brakes on Micah Alejado for the time being. I'm not willing to crown him as the next Cole McDonald or Shager or Bryant Moniz to come through this Hawaii system yet. He threw up some yards against Utah State when they were down 52-3 and shredded an absolutely historically bad New Mexico defense in their home finale last year. I want to see it against competent defenses and competent competition, and I want to see it during the course of an entire season. I do like the pieces that they bring back. I think Landon Sims can provide some pop in the running back room if they can run the football effectively, which during stretches last season they couldn't. And I think that the receiver room is loaded. I think Pafele Ashlock is great. I think Nick Senecal is set to have a breakout season. Jackson Harris, as you mentioned, is going to provide a really solid option. So they definitely have some dudes. They've just got to get this system clicking, and it unlocks a lot for Hawaii so long as the quarterback play is what they think it's going to be. Defensively, this Hawaii team was very impressive at times last season with how they packed it in against the run, and their defense really kept them in games a lot last year. I'm not as impressed based on the wins against FCS Delaware State and Northern Iowa, and then they beat up on a bad Fresno team, or excuse me, they beat up on a bad Nevada team at home, and then the finale against New Mexico. So they were still a little ways away from bowl eligibility, if we're being honest. I played under 6.5 very, very early in the summer with respectable odds. And so I think that that one's probably okay. But this is also one where I think, you look at who they added in the portal with Dejon Benton, Luther McCoy, Kealo, Akana at linebacker from Utah. They definitely made an attempt to continue to hang their hat on some solid defensive talent. So I think that they'll be in a lot of these games. The road performances are just terrible, and there's no more staggering contrast in FBS football than Hawaii at home versus Hawaii on the road. It's been bad for years. And so the trips are tough at Arizona, Air Force, Colorado State in elevation, at San Jose State, and at UNLV, I think are games they'll struggle to win a road game this year. So you've really got to get the gimmies at home. They're going to have absolutely no question but to beat Sam Houston and Portland State. You'll have to beat, as expected, Utah State. I really think what this comes down to is I think that they are in their very last game of the season, in the last game of the FBS schedule. It'll be a 3 a.m. Eastern time sweat for anyone who wants to be involved in this game on November 29th. I think they're playing Wyoming, trying to fight and claw and scratch their way to get to 6-6 and get to a bowl game. So this is a regular season win hook that I think is very important, going either over 5.5 or under 6.5. You can try and thread that needle if that's the game you like to play. I personally don't, but I did under 6.5. I think they're playing Wyoming to try to get to a bowl game and possibly save the regime of Timmy Chang in Hawaii.
All right, let's pick up the tempo here. Let's go, dare I say, Aztec fast. San Diego State 3-9 last season, 2-5 in the Mountain West, 25-1 to win it this year. Their win total set at 5.5. 13 starters returning 3 on offense, 10 though on defense. They're 14th in returning production there. Can Sean Lewis get this team believing, because they had quit written all over them late in the season last fall, and now it's all new skill position players and a new transfer quarterback. Yes, the defense has 10 starters back, which is the most in the G5, but it was also awful by every metric. However you wanted to slice and dice it, their entire stat sheet was bleeding red last year. They promoted Rich Ulrich to defensive coordinator. He was a good one at Idaho. Is that enough to change your mind on them making a bowl, Duck?
I think you could argue that no Mountain West team last season had worse quarterback play than San Diego State. AJ Duffy and Danny O'Neill just really never materialized in Sean Lewis's Aztec fast offense, where an athletic quarterback can just unlock so many doors for the offensive platoon. In comes Jaden Danegal from Michigan and Bert Emanuel, who was electric at times at Central Michigan. The ground game did show some flashes, but there was just no reliable consistency to speak of last season. I think Christian Washington will be a serviceable replacement to Marquez Cooper, although Cooper is a better player and was much more explosive during his time there and at Kent State. The offensive line is being completely retooled, so that'll be something that we'll have to watch. They should produce better results in year 2 of the system. It was a really just difficult task going from a complete 180 change in scheme offensively. What Sean Lewis wanted to run was way different than what they ran under the Brady Hoke years. So it was just a tough task, I think, in year 1. I think it was tougher for Sean Lewis than probably what he expected. As long as they can run the football effectively in this Aztec fast system, third down offense and the red zone offensive metrics should be aided by more consistent ground attack. I like the fact that 10 starters are back defensively, including Trey White and his 13 sacks and 18 QB pressures from last season. Mr. Williams will step in and add strength at linebacker and should make the other contributors in the room better. The secondary returns nearly everybody intact and adds Josiah Cox, who could have a breakout season. And I think the schedule does create some opportunity for the Aztecs. They'll get a winnable game early with Stony Brook. It will not surprise me at all if they pluck off either Cal or Wazoo. You've got a road trip to DeKalb against a descending Northern Illinois team, which I would consider winnable. They host Colorado State and Wyoming, and they have Nevada and New Mexico on the slate. When I was assessing the projected regular season wins and where they might come out, even before books had posted numbers at the G5 level, I was assuming this was going to come out at 5.5 or maybe even 6.0. 4.5 is just too much with too low, with how much this team returns with defensive production. I think that we'll see a lot better offensive output with Sean Lewis in year 2. I played over 4.5 wins. I think this is a 6-6 football team that makes a bowl game this year in San Diego State.
The Big Bets on Campus podcast has always had an opinion on Sean Lewis. What is yours in 2025, Collin?
Fast totals going high. Hopefully they get too high. Maybe we can play some unders. We're always playing San Diego State overs. Bert Emanuel running this Aztec offense might be some of the most fun watch late at night. Bert Emanuel, our Tuesday, Wednesday night king. This is a pass for me, 4.4. I do think Sean Lewis is going to get the program going. I like the direction that he's going, but after Stony Brook, I don't see San Diego State favored by 6 or more in any other game. So I'm completely passing on them.
All right, let's jump to Wyoming, 3-9 last season, 2-5 in conference play, 27-1 to win the conference. That's a hard pass for me. Win total sitting at 5.5, 5 starters returning 4 on offense, 1 on defense, 28th overall in returning production, 3rd offensively. We warned you last year that the Craig Bowl magic was gone, and it was completely gone. Top 50 defenses from 2017 to 2023 with some elite G5 defenses sprinkled in. Last fall, 90th in scoring defense, 103rd in total D, 11 turnovers forced all season long, dreadful in the red zone, and they retained Aaron Bull as DC, so they didn't make a change. There's no scheme coming to save them. Top transfers, by the way, coming in on defense from BMI. Hard to get excited about a Kedet and Army. It looks like they're looking for, military reinforcements, but I just don't see that being a big difference maker for the Pokes. Can the offense bail them out if the defense doesn't progress? I don't see that either. Sure, Caden Anderson shredded New Mexico, but we just basically said with Alejado, that didn't make a difference for Hawaii, so I'm not going to give him a green check mark here for, torching the Lobos. That defense being laughably bad, I think it basically makes that film unusable. They have one weapon, which is tight end John Michael Gillenborg. You have to be able to run the ball to be able to open things up for a tight end in the passing game. And despite returning 4 starters up front, I have my doubts about their hog mollies being able to move people consistently in the trenches because they were 124th in line yards, 60th in run blocking per PFF, and they couldn't stop anyone from getting to the quarterback. So yes, that continuity is great, but this was by any stretch offensive, pass blocking or run blocking. They just weren't elite either way. I think this is fool's gold alert. This is the circle in terms of a mini play that I have. They have Akron and Northern Iowa to start the season. Please, Wyoming, win convincingly, because then it's a run of Utah at Colorado, UNLV at home, San Jose State at home. They're going to be severely outclassed in those games, and I want some, ideal numbers to be able to go ahead and fade Wyoming. I'm going to go under 5.5 on the win total as well, because after those first 2 wins, I don't see 4 more on the schedule in any way, shape, or form, any magical thinking getting there for the Cowboys. 4 of their last 6 are on the road, including a Hawaii road trip to end the season. Colin, any thoughts on the Pokes? I know that we loved Craig Bowl and everything. He brought that grittiness, that defense. They were often a bear trap at altitude for teams coming in. I think that's all basically, gone up in smoke in the last, let's call it 16 months.
Yeah, I mean, I actually make it 5.7, which says I should take the over, but I don't like this team whatsoever. Caden Anderson's numbers are completely skewed by the New Mexico game. 8 big time throws on the season. 5 of them came from the New Mexico game. I'm not a believer. The run game, I'm not really good with DeMontra Harris coming in from North Texas and Taron Kellen coming in from Charlotte. Kellen specifically had terrible yards after first contact and just fantastic missed tackle rates for 2 years at Charlotte. But like, what's this offensive line going to do for you? And then on the defensive side, the two deep secondary is just void of experience, and they only return one PBU from last year. There's 3 wins on the schedule. You mentioned Akron, Northern Iowa, Nevada. After that, it's coin flip city, and I just want nothing to do with the win total, so I'm passing.
Any quick thoughts here, Duck, on the Pokes?
No real wow factor offensively. Defense looks to be a mess, although they kind of hang their hat on that. So they could possibly draw up something to be a little bit quasi competitive. I don't have a real strong feel either way, but I think there could be 2 situations where you could play Wyoming this season. They catch Colorado in a massive sandwich at Houston before, and then they host BYU, does Colorado after. And of course, BYU embarrassed Colorado in the bowl game. Certainly they'll have those 2 games circled, but then in comes sneaky Wyoming. If the Pokes are catching enough points, 22 and a half or so, I could see myself on Wyoming to try to muck that game up in a game where Colorado has already shown disinterest and apathy in games during the Deion Sanders tenure. So I could see Wyoming as a play there. And then they host San Jose State on October 11th. And I'm no meteorologist and I don't try to pretend to be one, but the wind could rip through layered ice like you would not believe at that time of year. And so if the wind is howling and San Jose State can't throw the ball, they're already prowess to struggle to stop the run. I could see a competitive game. So we'll have to circle back to that later on in the season here on the G5 deep dive, and we'll assess it at that time. But those are 2 spots I have circled to play on Wyoming.
Football season is here, folks, and we've got some huge improvements and updates coming on the award-winning Action Network app. We're really excited to discuss those in the coming weeks. But to get the most out of the app, you'll still need to be an Action Pro subscriber. It's only with Action Pro you get real-time pick alerts from me, Duck, Colin, Stuckey, and the entire Action Network team of experts. Plus, you get access to pro projections powered by Sean Kerner and his team of predictive analytics savants, plus a million other benefits. I mean, you have to sign up for this. And right now, BBOC listeners can save $20 off the annual price of Action Pro. Just go to actionnetwork.com/pro and use promo code BBOC20. That's actionnetwork.com/pro and use code BBOC20 for $20 off the annual price of Action Pro. We're going to close things out with 3 teams. Utah State up first. The Aggies went 4-8 last season, 3-4 in the conference. They are 60-1. This is when the numbers start to get pretty big to win the conference. Win total sitting at 3.5. 4 stars, returning just 1 on offense, 3 on defense, 124th in returning production overall. Bronco Ball is back in the Beehive State, and for a stretch, he was great at BYU, winning 10 or more games in 5 of 6 seasons. But then, on the other side, he never really had any bad seasons. It was just, sometimes they struggled to break through to that next level in his last 4 or 5 years there in Salt Lake City. He got Virginia to an ACC title game, which is no small feat. And in year 1 with New Mexico, he made them a feisty bunch from what had previously been a bunch of doormats. He excels when he has a mobile quarterback, a playmaker who can make things happen when things break down, is not afraid to run it 10 to 15 times a game. Do the Aggies have that this year? Yes, they do. Bryson Barnes finished last season in his last 2 starts, 39 carries, 378 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. Miles Davis transfers in from BYU. He's a pure track star kind of speedy running back. Can they block it up in front? They were 21st in line yards last year, but they only returned 1 starter there. They have some experience because players got hurt in the past 2 seasons. But they didn't address this unit in the portal, and that is concerning to me. I'm going to keep a close tab on them early on against UTEP, because if they can't push the minors around in the trenches, I'm not sure this offense is going to work, for the majority of the season. This is their identity. They need to be able to be effective in run blocking. Defense could be a problem from day one. Only 1 starter back on this defense, but last year at New Mexico, they were also a mess defensively for Bronco. He brings defensive coordinator Nick Howell with him. That one confuses me. I think it would have been a good time to bring in somebody new, try something different. Lots of different attacks and tempos to prep for this season. You go from UTEP and Scotty Walden with tempo to Air Force, then Air Force Light back, Air Force Light in terms of bandy. So you got another kind of triple option in sheep's clothing to deal with. Then back to Hawaii, all in the first 6 weeks of the season. So for a play caller, I don't have a lot of faith in, and personnel that has never really played together. I'm just seeing overs, to be honest with you, because New Mexico overs last year, 9-3 to the over. I'm back on that train. I don't have a play on them to win the conference on their win total, but I think we could see some really high scoring games. What do you think, Collin, with Bronco Mendenhall back in the state of Utah?
I don't think we can underestimate what he's doing back in the state of Utah. This is his territory to collect transfers and recruits, and I think he will have them back and firing hard. But what are we going to get for this season? I mean, Bryson Barnes, the pig farmer from Utah, comes in, and his turnover worthy play rate has increased from 2% to 4.5% over the years since his inaugural year as a Ute, and it's not getting any better for him. But he has 559 rushing yards last year, so I mean he can scoot, and maybe that kind of fits what they want to do on the ground here. From a total win perspective, I'm at 5, so I just can't really get over 5.5 here. There is experience at each level on the defense. There's one player, nose tackle, a middle linebacker, a free safety. I would expect improvements from a fundamentals perspective. This team was bottom 15 in havoc and tackling, but then you go back and look at New Mexico. I mean, you just automatically assume the Broncos going to clean that kind of stuff up. But New Mexico was bottom 15 in all those numbers too. So I can't really automatically assume that. Schedule is a little bit dicey. Air Force gets, there's just things on here that I don't like about the schedule that is keeping me off the win total. But a play against Scotty Waldron and UTEP in week 1, I believe is actually, minus 156 on the money line is hanging on out there. I make Utah State a little bit more of a favorite than that. I think that's the play to go because I will take Bronco against Scotty Waldron week 1 anytime.
With no more official plays on your Mountain West card, you're getting beamed up to the mothership. I appreciate you, Collin. You are going to be handling the rest of the Power Forward previews with Stuckey. So if you're listening in, make sure to keep an eye out for when those drop. The exhaustive work you guys do, I'm expecting 2, 3, maybe 4 hours on the ACC. I will be let down if it's any shorter than that. Collin, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Talk to you guys soon.
Duck, any thoughts here on Utah State that you would like to share before we get into really the dregs of the conference? But even dregs, there's gold in them, there are hills. We can find ways to bet on these teams, situational spots, or just going all in, pushing your chips in on fading unders on the season win totals. But Utah State is a team clearly in transition. I think the offense could work with a mobile quarterback, but this defense, I don't see it at all. And as I mentioned, I just want to bet over until the market corrects.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that the defensive coordinator being brought over from New Mexico was puzzling, and it's equally as puzzling to see that they brought over 5 players in the transfer portal from New Mexico on the defensive side of the football, something I would have probably tried not to do given how poor New Mexico played last year defensively all season. I think they're trying to recreate the magic and the lightning in a bottle effect that they had with Devon Dampier at New Mexico last year, and they're going to expect Bryson Barnes to be that. The book is still out on if that's going to work with the talent around him. I think they might be able to draw it up. The OC coordinator from comes in as was the wide receiver coach at San Jose State the last 7 years. So I think they'll adopt some of those quick passing principles and trying to get the ball out of Barnes's hands quickly and get it out to playmakers in space. We'll see how that goes. I think the tempo is going to be ultra fast. And I think we're going to get a lot of games that are going to have a lot of possessions. And overs could be good until the totals get to be out of control. You'll remember we had the highest total of the FBS season last year when Utah State played New Mexico, closed at 87.5, and the game soared over. We won't get that type of game this year. We'll get into New Mexico here in a little bit, but I think over against UTEP, I think UTEP could have some success against this defense, and there's a chance that they really have to try to see what they've got offensively, and so it could push the envelope a little bit against the Miners. I look to fade Utah State when they host Air Force coming off of Texas A&M, where they could get beat up physically in SEC territory, and Air Force will be off of a bye. And it'll be real interesting to see how that road trip to New Mexico gets handled for Bronco Mendenhall going back to UNM for the first time. So interesting schedule spots. I don't see a lot of success here. I think 4-8 seems about right for the UTAGs.
The Nevada Wolfpack up next. The boys from Reno went 3-10 last season, 0 in Mountain West Conference play. They're 90-1 to win the championship crown here in the Mountain West this fall. Their win total sitting at 4.5. 4 starters return, 3 on offense, just 1 on defense. 132nd in returning production, which is really rough. It's going to be difficult to overcome that right from the jump. So my question for you, Duck, is who are the Wolfpack? Because this was a team that nearly beat SMU, that went to the college football playoff. They started 3-4, and then they finished with 6 straight losses. And then also, I'll tack on one more question for you. What's your take on Purdy, this quarterback? Is the 4-star recruit who finally realizes his potential, or is he just a bust, just waiting to get pulled early in the season?
Well, truly, you could make a case that through the first 6 weeks of the 2024 college football season, there was no bigger surprise team in all of FBS than Nevada. They certainly captured the hearts of the degenerates in week 0 with the national TV game with the close loss against SMU. And they at one point were 6-1 against the number before fading late. This year, Brendan Lewis departs, Chubba Purdy comes in. I'm still not sold on his skill set, on what he brings to the table. I've just never been impressed during his tenure anywhere that he's been. And, he takes over under center. Speaking of center, I mean, really, it's the offensive line that's going to be a complete rebuild this year for Nevada. Andrew Madrigal is the lone returning holdover on a completely rebuilt offensive line that I felt really struggled last year to protect their quarterback. There are some pieces at receiver and running back that you could possibly try to stretch to get excited about, but nothing really stands out to me offensively as eye-popping. And the offense, in my opinion, will have very, very little punch this season. And just there's no wow factor on paper for the Wolfpack offense, in my opinion. The outperforming Wolfpack defense is also undergoing a significant rebuild at all 3 levels of the defense, which is certainly a cause for concern for me. The big physical secondary players that really were so disruptive against SMU in that opener, those players are no longer there, and it's a full rebuild in the secondary. The defensive front was just far too weak against the run last season, surrendering 5.1 yards per carry on the entire season on the ground. And the havoc numbers disappeared. 14 sacks and 54 tackles for loss is just not going to be competitive at any level of football when you play 12 games. It just wasn't enough. This team was just so undisciplined as well, and it actually directly cost them some wins. 99 penalties for 935 penalty yards is just an eye-popping stat in a bad way for Nevada. They were just so undisciplined last year, and that comes down to coaching. I think this team is going to resemble the Wolfpack team that was blown out by Colorado State, Hawaii, and UNLV late in the season last year versus the feisty bunch that we saw almost defeat SMU. When I was assessing my regular season win totals, I was completely certain that this was going to come out 3.5. Last year, the regular season win was 2.5, and they played a 13-game schedule, just barely squeaking over the total. I was convinced we were going to see a 3.5 with plus money on the under. I was still going to go under. When I saw 4.5, I had to pick my eyeballs up off the floor. It was the very first regular season win wager that I made, all the way under 4.5. I think that number is pretty well gone now, but even 4.0 flat, I would go under on the Wolfpack. It's going to be a real struggling season for them in Reno.
I'm with you on the under. It's an official play for me. Let's close things out with the Lobos from New Mexico. In Albuquerque last year, they went 5-7 with Brocco Mendenhall at the helm, 3-4 in conference play, but also Devin Dampier now off to Utah to run that offense with former offensive coordinator Jason Beck. They are, wait for it, 220-1 to win the Mountain West Conference, and that's not enough to entice me to play them. I can't play the Lobos. Their win total is at 3.5. They got 4 starters back, 1 on offense, 3 on defense. 135th. There's only 136 teams. 135th in returning production. But this is all about year 0. New regime. How do we build out for year 2 and 3 and potentially get back to a bowl? Give us the full breakdown on Jason Eck, and if you believe this defense can keep them even competitive in some games once we get into conference play.
Yeah, well, first of all, Jason Eck steps into a really impossible situation. 3 head coaches in 3 years for the Lobos in Albuquerque. Gone is the electric play of Devon Dampier that we saw last season time and time again, along with Eli Sanders, Luke Wysong, Ryan Davis, and everybody along the offensive line. It is absolutely bare cupboards for Jason Eck on offense. This 2025 Lobo unit will look nothing like the eye candy that we saw on TV much of last season. Offensive coordinator Luke Schleisner comes in with Eck from Idaho, and they're going to deploy a slow-paced, methodical, run-heavy approach. 2-to-1 run-pass ratio is to be expected. They're going to lean on Scott Ray Humphrey, who comes in. He was a great FCS running back at Montana State, but he was also the benefactor of a friendly scheme, and he always had a top 3 FCS offensive line that he was running behind, which will certainly not be the case this season with New Mexico. Their offensive line is going to be up against it week in and week out. I think New Mexico really did have a bottom 10 offensive line last season, and it was just masked by the heroic effort of Dampier week in and week out. They didn't give up a lot of sacks or tackles for loss, but he was consistently escaping pressure, running for his life, and having to make heroics. And I just don't see that happening with Jack Lane, who's not nearly as mobile. He won't be as poised at this level. And I expect the offense to struggle to consistently move the football, and it's going to expose a really, really weak defense. The challenge this year defensively is that the defensive line secured just 11 sacks, and only Gabe Lopez comes back. The linebacker room does bring in some FCS talent to include Jackson Eck, Jason Eck's son, and I think he's a pretty decent player. It's not just a nepotism situation there. I think he's actually a pretty decent player at linebacker. The secondary was just significantly overhauled with Utah Tech, Ohio, and Northern Iowa transfers to attempt to strengthen a unit that was just so stinking bad last year. This New Mexico secondary allowed 65% completions and 30 touchdown passes surrendered last year to only 3 interceptions. It was just a coverage unit that was they were just shredded week in and week out. So because of Idaho State, New Mexico State, Utah State, and Nevada on the schedule, I didn't play the win total, but I would assuredly only go under 3.5. I may look at a conference wins under 2.5 if I can find a respectable number there. I just think this team is going to be up against it. I've already faded them in week 1 as they go to Michigan. I think the offense is going to struggle to maintain possession of the ball and stay on the field. It's going to be a really, really tough rebuilding season for New Mexico.
All right, Duck, we started this Mountain West / Pac-2 preview with 4 of us. We're down to 2. Stuckey and Collin are off to prepare for the Power 4, but I also want to set the table for what's to come in your podcast feed. We got Conference USA, we got the American, and we got the MAC. We also bring back Stuckey for the MAC preview, and then it's Stuckey and Collin breaking down all the teams in the Power 4. That's going to be exciting. That comes the following week after that, and we have awesome news, which is we have a week 0 watch party in Chicago, Illinois. Joe's on weed on August 23rd. Doors open for that first game, that 11 a.m. kickoff, Farmageddon from the Emerald Isle. We got Iowa State, K-State. We got the whole crew there. We got Collin, Stuckey, Duck, and myself. Please come by, cut it up with us. Let's have some drinks. Let's throw in some futures. College football is back. Any closing thoughts before we kick it out of here for the Big Bets on Campus podcast, Duck?
Yeah, it should be a real interesting season in the Mountain West. I think we've got a lot of teams that are in transition. We've got a couple of usual suspects at the top. I think Boise State and San Jose State are poised to meet in the Mountain West Conference Championship game. And just look forward to a great 2025 season of Mountain West football.
I am with you as well. Boise State winning over San Jose State. I am a little bit more pessimistic on UNLV, but I think they certainly could be a wild card if everything works properly in Mullen's system and Calandria ends up, being the good version of them and cuts down on all those turnovers. But yeah, I agree with you. This is an interesting league with some really, really good coaches, particularly at the bottom, whether it's FCS coaches or Bronco Mendenhall coming back in. So from top to bottom, you have reasons for optimism. And we've said this time and time again. Do not make up your mind in the paycheck portion of the season where some of these teams are going to get beat like a drum. Don't write them off. Don't slide them too far down on your power rankings because you're going to miss out on an opportunity to cash some tickets in October and November by playing some of these bottom teams that may not even go bowling, but they're certainly going to cover some spreads. For Josh,
let's cherish this. Let's cherish this last Mountain West season as we know it, with the upheaval in the Mountain West and six Mountain West regulars going to the Pac-12 next season. Let's take full advantage of this last 2025 Mountain West season as we know and love it.
Well said, Josh. For Josh Dunn, I'm Mike Calabrese. Thank you so much for listening to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This completes our Mountain West Conference preview. Please check out the rest of your feed to catch all of our previews. We're going to hit all 136 teams in basically a 2-week period because we love college football. We love you guys. You make the show possible. Please hit us with a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to the podcast. Thanks so much, and we'll catch you here next time.